I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. Could the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. Badger.
Here.
Mr. Halter.
Here.
Mr. Prahl.
Here.
Mr. Volnick.
Here.
Mayor Riggle. Here. Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Here.
Chairman Simpson.
Here. Before we move into item number 2, there's been a recommendation to make a change in sequence for regular business on the agenda tonight. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, just really quickly, so what I would recommend the staff under regular business is to have the Josh Morgan case first as it's published and move up Communities of Glen Ross cases to item B, moving Seattle House to item C, and High Point Place to item D. We could.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Badger,
Second.
second by Mr. Volnick.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 2, the approval of the motion summary of the Planning Commission meeting held on July 18th, 2018, as reported and transcribed.
So moved.
Motion by Mayor Riggle,
Second.
second by Mr. Halter.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Vice Chairman Mansoras.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. Okay, item number 3, election of officers. Item A, chairperson.
You want me to take this one over?
Yeah, why don't you take this one over?
Does anybody want to nominate Stacy for chair again?
So nominated.
Third.
Fourth. All right, so we've got a motion by Mr. Badger and a second by Mayor Riggle.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Mr. Mansoras.
Yes.
And Mr. Simpson.
Yes. Item B, vice chairperson.
Does anybody want to nominate George? I can keep going.
Motion to elect Mr. Manzoras.
Motion by Mr. Paul,
Second.
second by Mr. Halter.
Mr. Badger.
Yes.
Mr. Halter.
Yes.
Mr. Prahl.
Yes.
Mr. Volnick.
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Mr. Mansoras.
Since Stacy voted for himself, I guess I can vote for myself.
I see how this goes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes.
Congratulations, you two.
All right. Okay, moving on to item number 4, regular business. Could the clerk please read item A into the record?
Item A, case 2018-1589, a request by Joshua Morgan Construction LLC for approval of a rezoning amendment at 1354 State Route 521, parcels number 519-441-02-002-000, 519-441-02-003-000, and 519-441-02-004-000. From A1 Agricultural District to R3 One Family Residential District on approximately 2.091 acres.
All right, who will be our presenter this evening?
I will.
Excellent.
Oh, here. Fancy new pointer.
You have a ditch.
It's out of juice. Do it the old way.
It takes one.
Okay, the subject site's located on the east side of 521, right across from Kensington subdivision, 5 or 6 acre parcels north of Bowtown Road. Currently, it's in the county, currently being annexed to the city, these 3 lots. Future land use plan has this as low density single family, which the lots are currently about 2/3 of an acre each. This is the aerial. On the northern portion of the site, there's a house that straddles two lots. That house would be demolished, and he would develop each lot as they are today, as under the R3 zoning district regulations. And upon annexation, they would acquire city sanitary and water services. This is the plat for that proposal. 3 lots as is. Engineering review and plans as we speak pertaining to the sanitary and water line extensions. Access to the site, each lot would have a curb cut to State Route 521. The layout, there's no layout proposed. However, each house would have to meet the minimum requirements of the R3 zoning district and Chapter 1171 of our residential design criteria and performance standards. There is a bike path on the north side of Old Town Road. In front of each of these, along the frontage of each of these lots, they would have to build a city sidewalk per our requirements after the house is constructed or during that process. Landscaping for the house would be per section Chapter 1171. Staff recommends approval with 4 conditions. Happy to answer any questions if you have.
Commissioner, City Council did act on this annexation, the final step of the annexation, approved it at a recent meeting.
Any questions for staff?
I don't know whether it really has much to do with the zoning. I was just curious, has there been any thought to maybe a single access point with like a frontage driveway or something like that, maybe across from, I can't remember the name of the street, the subdivision, but
There is not, to answer your question.
should there be, I just want to bring it up, just
Yeah, I don't know if the lots are deep enough to accommodate that.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Do you have any questions? Does the commission have any questions?
Potentially. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Right here.
Joshua Morgan, 862 Township Road, 208, Marengo, Ohio, 43324.
Andrew Wecker, Manus Martin and Pergram, 50 North Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio, 43015.
Okay. I guess the question for you guys would be, do you have anything to add to staff's presentation?
Dave Eflin brought up the fact that council recently passed ordinance 18-62 as far as the last step in the annexation. And while Mr. Morgan is here, he might be able to explain to you, the sort of house that he builds and his experience as a single family home builder.
So I'm a custom home builder, been doing it since 1999, mostly spotlights like these here. And I'm not trying to go away from what's already conforming, the neighborhood Kensington Place there. Looking at probably doing 1,700 to 2,000 foot, 2-story, more than likely with a attached garage. Just pretty much to conform. I'm not trying to go outside of the norm.
So you'll contract to build, or are you going to spec these out?
Currently, I'll do at least one spec house, in all honesty, but I've already had 2 people already contact me about building for them.
That's great.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? No? You're good with all the conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public here tonight who wish to speak on this particular case? If you could just come to the microphone and state your name and your address for the record.
I'm Max Caldwell. I live at 1509 Bowtown Road. My property butts up to this property here. And did you say that there's going to be a sidewalk in front of this along 521?
Each lot will require a sidewalk along the frontage per our city requirements.
Okay, I got a problem with this then. Between, I can't think of the people's name, but where their property ends going to the east, water runs from 521 right straight down their property line and flows onto my property, and then it all floods out on their neighbor's property too. That's a problem. If they don't put a sidewalk in there, the city or somebody needs to put a drain right there, because all the water from 521 drains onto our property. So something needs to be done about that.
Any thoughts on that from an engineering standpoint?
Well, to date, the only plans, related items we've received are the sanitary sewer extension to provide utility service to the property. Water service is already available. So when the lots develop, perhaps that would definitely be something to look at.
Well,
But
see, none of
nothing's
this,
been presented to date is from an engineering standpoint for development of the lot itself.
Okay, that's a good point. This is just a rezoning case for the property today.
And there are 3 pre-existing lots on the property.
Mhm.
So it's not like a subdivision will have to occur.
Right.
see, none of this ever happened until they started Kensington, that last phase they done. So when they put them lines on the other side of the road, either they forgot to hook up a pipe or something, and all that water started draining onto our property. That's my main concern right there.
Which one's your property?
Ours is on the north, well, the south side of this. I got 8.5 acres there.
Okay.
But it floods on the back corner of my property and the neighbor of theirs on 521. I mean, her lot is almost like a pond if we get a lot of rain. I'm surprised she hasn't said something about it. That's my main concern.
Yeah, one thing I'd say, Commission and Sir, is that it's not necessarily this applicant's responsibility to fix stormwater issues that are in the general area. However, he does have to account for stormwater for any development that he would do on his lots. Again, there's 3 existing lots. His proposal right now, if this zoning goes through, he could build one house on each lot.
Yeah,
That's it. Certainly something we could take a look at, though. Sounds like it's maybe a bigger issue than just these 3 lots is what I'm
yeah,
getting
it
from.
runs across the, I can't think of the people's name there, but it runs all the way down 520 there,
Yeah.
road there.
And obviously, it's not all in city of Delaware.
No,
I think through engineering, we could at least coordinate with our county agencies and take a look at the issue.
okay. That's all I have.
Are there any other members of the public here tonight who wish to speak on this case? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. It's the wish of the commission.
Make a motion to approve 2018-1589 with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prohl,
Second.
second by Mr. Mantzoros.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle. Yes. Vice Chairman Mansoris.
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. Could the clerk please read what is currently item D under regular business into the record?
Item D, Glen Ross North, Sections 2 through 4, Case 1, 2018-1731. A request by Glen Ross North LLC for approval of a final development plan for Glen Ross North, Sections 2 through 4, containing 127 single-family lots and approximately 65.81 acres located just east of Glen Parkway and north of the Glen Ross Golf Club on property zoned R2 PMU, one family with a planned mixed-use overlay district. Case 2, 2018-1733, a request by Glen Ross North LLC for approval of a final subdivision plat for Glen Ross North, Section 2, containing 48 single-family lots on approximately 28.726 acres on property zoned R2 PMU, one family with a planned mixed-use overlay district, and located at Irvin Loop, Delano Drive, Sycamore Lane, Irvin Wayne, Irvin Way, and Blackmore Drive. Case 3, 2018-1735, a request by Glen Ross North LLC for approval of a final subdivision plat for Glen Ross North Section 3, containing 44 single-family lots on approximately 17.930 acres on property zoned R2 PMU. One family with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located on Blackmore Drive, Winley Court, and Mellick Drive. Case 4, 2018-1737, a request by Glen Ross North LLC for approval of a final subdivision plat for Glen Ross North Section 4, containing 35 single-family lots on approximately 19.157 acres on property zoned R2 PMU. One family with a planned mixed-use overlay district and located at Mellick Drive and Irvin Way.
How about? Yeah, this is the northern section of Glen Ross North, the final three sections, 2 through 4. It's located just east of Glen Parkway, zoned R2 PMU. This is you can see the platted section 1 to the south. This is mostly vacant farmland. There are trees scattered throughout the site that would, some would be preserved, some would be removed. This is the original approved preliminary development plan that council approved in 2015. In 2016, council approved the preliminary or the final plat for section 1. The site work's done and they're going homes out in section 1 now, so they want to move forward with section 2 through 4, which this is the plan that shows that north of section 1, and it contained 127 houses. Section 2 would have 44 houses, and that's around the Radial Park would be section 2. Section 3 would have 44 single-family lots, and that would be along the eastern portion of the site adjacent to the railroad tracks. And section 4 would have 35 single-family lots, and that'd be the western portion of the site along future Glen Parkway. This is section 2 around the park. This is section 3 adjacent to the railroad tracks. And this is section 4 adjacent to future Glen Parkway. Access would obviously be through section 1 off Glen Parkway that would extend north, east, and west into the subdivision around the Radial Park being the highlight of this site. As I said, 127 single-family lots. 72 of those would be 80-footers, and 55 would be 70-footer lots. The minimum house size would be 1,800 square foot for a 1-story and 2,000 square feet for a 2-story, with any additional bedrooms above 2 to be additional 200 square foot per house. The design of the houses would have to match the Glen Ross Golf Club 100% natural materials, dimensional shingles and the like. This is the proposed landscape plan for the site, and also the parks plan. There's about 22 acres of parkland in the entire development. Obviously, there's 7 acres. The Radial Park's about 7 acres of it, and within that, there would be a pool. There would be a pool house. There would be a tot lot, 2 fields, and 20 parking spaces, and 20 additional spaces shaded if additional parking would be required in the future. The landscape plan, you'd have street trees throughout the site along the public streets. Adjacent to the railroad tracks to the east in section 3 would be a 10 to 12 foot high mound with landscaping to buffer the railroad tracks, and that would be consistent with the mound in the community of Glen Ross just to the south. And along the western portion, along future Glen Parkway, there would be mounding and landscaping required when that gets extended north of section 1 in the future. These are some of the landscape details of benches and the like. Staff would recommend additional benches in the park, and also a sidewalk connecting the proposed pool in the tot lot to the north. Staff would recommend that also, and that's a condition in the approval. Bike paths, there would be there is an existing 8-foot bike path along the east side of Glen Parkway. And also public sidewalks will be required throughout the development. Tree preservation, section 2, 68 caliper inches of trees would be removed, so they would owe $100 per caliper inch in that section. In section 3, 72 caliper inches would be removed, and in section 2, 52 caliper inches would be removed per their tree survey they submitted. So before each section is approved, they'd have to pay us those fees. A lighting plan would need to be submitted and approved by the chief building official for the development. And this is the outbuilding, pool building, that was approved back in April. And this is the final plan for that, showing it, one-story structure, pitched roofs, nice looking cupola on top. It was limestone, wainscoting on it. Staff recommends approval of the final development plan with 3 conditions. The final subdivision plat in section 2 with 10 conditions. The final subdivision plat in section 3 with 10 conditions. And the final subdivision plat in section 4 with 11 conditions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So the pool and the clubhouse will go into during section 2? or
Correct.
During section 2?
It'll be constructed in section, and all the park amenities.
And all the amenities. In the staff report, you just mentioned that sections 2, 3, and 4 will be in a new community authority. Is that the actual Delaware South new community authority, or are they going to try to do another authority eventually into the middle portion of the?
It'll be in the existing.
In the existing one, okay. Just making sure, trying to get as many buyers into that authority as possible right
Yeah.
now.
Good point. Section 1, I think with the zoning of this and the annexation, it
Yeah.
was contemplated on maybe a middle authority, but
Right.
For ease of transaction, plus it butts up to the south authority here, it made sense, and Glen Road in this case,
Yeah.
made sense to bring it into the south authority.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Would the applicant like to come forward, please? Just state your name and address for the record.
Brian Pringer, 5500 New Albany Road, Columbus, Ohio. I'm the civil engineer for the site. Be happy to answer any questions. I do have one comment before the questions, if you don't mind.
Please, go ahead.
For the radial park in the center, I just wanted to clarify that it will be constructed prior to phase 3, not necessarily before the homes in phase 2. I believe the zoning text states that the engineering plan should be approved prior to any building permits being issued for section 2, but the actual construction of it should occur just prior to phase 3.
We're okay with that?
Yeah, my understanding, talking to the developer through the years, and when they made, of course, they didn't have this pool and clubhouse in the initial plan, was that they want to get that in as fast as possible. So I think that's more hedging their bet than anything. They want to build houses too, because they can sell a lot of them right now, but they're going to get those improvements in as soon as possible, I'm confident.
That would require condition 10 of section 2 to be removed.
Well, I think it would still be within section 2.
I mean, if it's done before section 3, I would think we'd still consider that section 2 for sure.
Yeah, I would. What's your, Lance, what's your concern?
It says the radial park shall be submitted and approved prior to engineering, prior to any building permits approved in section 2.
Yeah, engineering submitted and approved, that's correct, not necessarily constructed.
So you will have that, okay.
Okay.
Okay, misunderstood.
You're good with all the other conditions on the cases?
Yeah, we talked to the developer today, and they're good with everything.
Okay. Any additional questions for the applicant while we have them up here? No? All right. Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public here this evening who've come to speak about this particular case? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. What's the wish of the commission?
You have another question?
Do I have, no, I don't have a question.
No. I'll make a motion to approve 2018-1731 with all staff recommendations.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Cross, second by Mr. Badger.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes.
Make a motion to approve 2018-1733 with all staff recommendations.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Prohl, second by Mr. Badger.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes.
Motion to approve 2018-1735 with all staff recommendations.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Prohl, second by Mr. Badger.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes.
And motion to approve 2018-1737 with all staff recommendations.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Prohl, second by Mr. Badger.
Mr. Badger,
Yes.
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Prohl,
Yes.
Mr. Volnick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
Yes.
Chairman Simpson.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to the next item on regular business. Could the clerk please read what is numbered as item B into the record?
Item B, Seattle House Apartments, Case 1, 2018-1394. A request by Metro Development LLC for approval of a rezoning amendment for the Seattle House Apartments, 240 units on approximately 24.212 acres. Parcel number 519-444-01-001-001 from R6 Multifamily Residential District and B3 Community Business District to R6 and B3 PMU, Plan Mixed Use Overlay District, and located on the north side of US 3637 and the south side of Bowtown Road, just east of the Chevron Auto Storage Lot. Case 2, 2018-1395, a request by Metro Development LLC for approval of a conditional use permit allowing the placement of a PMU, Plan Mixed Use Overlay District, to be established for the Seattle House Apartments, 240 units on approximately 24.212 acres, parcel number 519-444-01-001-001, and located on the north side of US 3637 and south side of Bowtown Road, just east of the Chevron Auto Storage Lot. Case 3, 2018-1396, a request by Metro Development LLC for approval of preliminary development plan for the Seattle House Apartments, 240 units on approximately 24.212 acres, parcel number 519-444-01-001-001, zoned R6 and B3 PMU, Plan Mixed Use Overlay District, and located on the north side of US 3637 and the south side of Bowtown Road, just east of the Chevron Auto Storage Lot.
Okay.
I think Elaine identified where it's located. It's zoned R6 multifamily. It's been zoned R6 since at least 2002, when this portion of this was rezoned to 24 acres. And in 2003, the then applicant had a apartment development approved by Planning Commission and Council for this site.
Well, that part works.
Yeah.
That's working.
Toys are his toys.
Have you been working on that the whole time?
What you pay me for?
Took you long
I
enough.
shouldn't act so surprised it's working then, right? Yeah, I knew that the whole time. If you hold this button down, you'll get
You'll get
a spotlight.
Get the spotlight. There it is.
Wow, that's
Same
fancy.
spot.
I like that.
Let's get out. Cool.
That's the 24 acres, and like I said, that's been rezoned R6 since at least 2002. And at that time, the applicant in 2003 had a preliminary development plan for apartments approved on that site. However, that's since expired since 2006, so we have a R6 site out there that allows multifamily units on that site. The comprehensive land use plan has that being multifamily, medium density, multifamily, also consistent with the zoning of the subject site. This is the aerial. It's fairly flat, vacant farmland. There are trees along Bowtown Road and along the eastern portion of the site that will be preserved, as we'll discuss later. In this plan, they are dividing this over 24-acre site into two sub-areas. Sub-area A, which is the northern portion of the site, would be almost 21 acres, and that would be where the multifamily apartments would be located. Sub-area B is the southwestern portion of the site that fronts US 3637, and that would be about a 2.5-acre commercial outlot, and just northeast of that would be an open space, about a 0.8 of an acre open space, remnant piece of property from the two roads that would be required to access this site. And I will show you as we move forward through this. This is the proposed plan. North is to the top of the screen. The apartment development's on the northern portion of it. The south is, extreme south is US 3637. The applicants prepared a traffic impact study that our engineers are currently reviewing, and they'd be responsible for any upgrades and improvements from a financial perspective for the development. Per the city thoroughfare plan, a north-south connector road is required from US 37 up to the apartment site, and also Biltmore Drive, which is the east-west connector, would be required from their western property line to the eastern property line per our thoroughfare plan, which would ultimately connect to Aldi's and the traffic signal. Right now, the Cheshire Island auto locks between those sites. If that ever develops, they would have to extend Biltmore Drive through that site. So that's how everything would connect out here. And on US 3637, that's where the main shopping signal, traffic signal is for the Glenwood Shopping Center. So that would be the primary access point into this site. And also along Bowtown Road, there is an emergency access point to Bowtown Road, emergency only for our fire department and police department. We didn't want the public to be accessing that road at this point. The access, the apartment complex itself, which is what we're discussing the preliminary development plan tonight for, the outlot is just an outlot. There's no preliminary plan for that. They're just dividing that out and rezoning that to B3. The apartment development itself would have two access points on Biltmore Drive, the main access point at this location, and there'd be a secondary access point just east of that into the apartment development that would access the 10 buildings and 240 units. And I believe there are 200 or 480 parking spots, spaces throughout the development, and 60 of those would be within, I think there are 5 or 6 parking garages they would have on the site itself. The outlot would have a full movement curb cut on Biltmore Drive in this area whenever it develops, and a right in, right out curb cut on the north-south connector whenever that comes in. So we're going to limit that access to that site. From a pedestrian connectivity perspective, there's external and internal connectivity points. A bike path would be required on the north side of Biltmore Drive per our bike plan. And also there'd be a sidewalk on the south side of Biltmore Drive. Also on the south side of Bowtown Road, a sidewalk would be required per the city standards. The north-south connector, staff is requiring a sidewalk on the west side of the road only, and a payment in lieu on the east side. The reason for that is south of US 3637 is the main entrance into Glenwood Shopping Center, and there's no sidewalk in that area. So instead of putting it on the east side of Biltmore, we take that payment in lieu and construct it on the east side or the west side of the existing access into the shopping center, where you can walk from this development into Glenwood Commons. The site itself, as I said, there's 480 parking spaces that a private street would access in a loop style around the 10 apartment buildings. Private streets would have to be built to public standards per the zoning code. The 240 units would be in 10 buildings, divided into 61 bedroom units and 182 bedroom units. Essentially 75% of the units would be 2-bedroom. And there'd be 24 units in each of the buildings. A clubhouse would be located, a clubhouse with a pool would be located just north of the main entrance. Also, there'd be an outdoor grill area at that location. Also, they're proposing about 40% of open space, just over 10 acres on its site. Most of it's passive. Staff is recommending more active type uses, maybe a playing field, and maybe a dog park or the like, and benches. And they are connecting a lot of the buildings and parking lots by internal sidewalks that would connect to the city bike plan on Biltmore Drive and the city sidewalk along Bowtown Road. So there is that connectivity occurring. The landscaping and screening, they are proposing a comprehensive plan that has public and private street trees, shade trees, foundation landscaping, and a significant buffering along the northern and eastern property lines. To the north and east are single-family homes in the township. They are proposing about a 6 to 7 foot high mound along Bowtown Road that wraps around the eastern portion of the site. Staff is recommending a 10-foot mound with 6 foot high pine tree, evergreen trees, planted in a soldier course manner to have a continuous buffer for to screen the neighbors. The applicant indicated over the phone they're okay with the 10-foot mound and buffer. They're willing to do that and wrap around to the east to buffer that single-family house to the east. Also, you can see the retention ponds along the northwest and northeast and southeast portions of the site. The interior landscaping achieves compliance with our code. However, there are some interior parking islands that would need street trees where you have that street tree look in the area. Tree removal and replacement. There's some large mature trees along Bowtown Road and some along the eastern portion of the site. They're preserving the majority of them, about 505 caliper inches, while they're removing about 68 caliper inches. Therefore, they meet the intent of our tree code of preserving most of the trees, a significant amount of trees in the area. Lighting plans would be required for the proposed development, and also a comprehensive sign plan staff recommends for the entire site for all the ground signs and any directional signs that may be required or requested. Here's the elevations of the proposed apartments. There's 3-story in height, about 42 feet high. They got pitched roofs. There are balconies on all the units. The majority of the exterior materials is vinyl and the like. There is some limestone, precast limestone on some of the elevations. This is the clubhouse. Again, it's mostly vinyl. There's a limestone wainscoting that has a cupola on it. This is a survey plat of the site. And this is some zoning district comparisons. On the left is the R6 district, which is currently out there. Then on the right is the R6 PMU standards that they're requesting. I just want to show you the difference between the two. There's some differences, some in here. The density by right today, they're allowed 8 units per acre, which would be 192 units. Or if they meet the density bonus requirements, they'd be allowed 10 units per acre, which is around 240 units. They are proposing 240 units, which is about 9.9 units per acre on using the entire 24-acre site. The building height in the district today is 35 feet. They're requesting it to be 42 feet. The minimum apartment size for a 1-bedroom is 800 square feet, and for a 2-bedroom it's 950 square feet. They're proposing 678 to 933 square feet for the 1 and 10 2-bedroom apartments. The natural materials in the R6 district is 100% natural materials on all elevations. They're proposing less than 50%. In the R6 district, the buffer adjacent to single-family residential is required to be 6-foot-high continuous screen, which can be a privacy fence. They're proposed a 10-foot-high mound with 6-foot-high evergreen trees planted in a soldier course manner. In an R6 district, the minimum open space is 20%. In this development, they're proposing approximately 43%. In the R6 district, apartment amenities, none are required. In this proposal, they're proposing a clubhouse, pool, outdoor grill, and et cetera, and we're asking them for more than that. In the report, one condition is that we're requesting that the building materials on the apartment units that face Bowtown Road and US 36, 37, those elevations, that they have more natural materials on those elevations because they'd be exposed to the public while the interior elevations would not be. Staff recommends approval of the zoning text amendment with 4 conditions, the conditional use permit with 0 conditions, and the preliminary development plan with 22 conditions. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments for you. Number one, at your desk tonight, there was a letter supplied today from Cheshire, the Gills, in support of the project, and they provide some of their reasons for why they're in support of it within their letter that was provided to you, each of you, at your desk this evening. So please review that, as I'm sure we'll have some public comment as well to review. A couple other things to think about. I think we're getting some significant buffering and mounding with respect to this site. It has been annexed since about 1991 and zoned multifamily for many, many years with a plan that was approved and has since expired, as Lance said. This is kind of the new version of it, and in fact harkens back closer to some of the original zoning on the site, which had a little bit more commercial than multifamily before the last version of the plan was changed. I do want to just remark that I spoke with our economic development team today and just confirmed that one of the things that we're seeing as a need in our community is what we would call, in a shorthand way, housing, affordable housing for our workers. And at this point, what that team is hearing from all the businesses that they visit with and the ones that they're trying to attract to our community is that that's a problem. We just simply don't have enough of those kinds of units in town to augment the businesses and to help provide for a workforce and a labor force for those businesses. It's always good to have a range of housing in any community. Rather than sort of a monolithic culture of whatever it may be. It could be all apartments or it could be all very expensive homes. Obviously, the price of housing is going up at this particular moment. And so they view this as, in general, and at a 50,000 foot level, important to provide some more units like this within our community. I think we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
I do. I'm looking at the densities, and I know we've had a lot of discussion on densities over the past few months on how it gets calculated and so on. But part of this that's included when you put it all together in the 24 acres actually has a proposed outlot on it. So can you count that toward dwelling units per acre?
We typically do. In Delaware, count the gross acreage of the site when we're dealing with a mixed-use development as proposed here. It's really not any different than some of those ones we dealt with earlier in the year that were not PMUs, but they were PUDs, sort of the PMUs of their time, where there were overall densities required and then within sub-areas required as well. But we typically would look at the entire site from a gross density standpoint. Again, and you're right, Mr. Badger, we've all had, I can calculate density any way you want. I did look at this a little bit and looked at, although ironically the R6 doesn't allow single family housing in it, It does provide for a minimum lot size for single-family houses for whatever reason, even though they're not permitted. And when I take that minimum lot size in this overall acreage, and I put, just for hypothetically, single-family houses on here, and I load them up with what the census says a house contains in terms of number of people, I get about the same number of people as I would in this development. So just another way to calculate density. Again, it's possible to calculate it any way you want to. I view this more in a sort of classic planning way as a plan development, which is what it's proposed as, and more of a clustered subdivision. So it's clustered on the north side of this site, which has been zoned multifamily for quite some time, and these densities are in keeping with that range of 8 to 10 units per acre.
So will the applicant be coming back at a later date with respect to the outlot for the commercial?
The way the text is set up, they would have to come back for preliminary and final. This really just sets the lot.
It just sets the lot and from what they'll be building for residential and then what would be left over for commercial.
Correct, and the text also sets the outline of the design, the setbacks, those sorts of things for both lots.
So with what would be available in that outlot, what size of commercial building would fit on there, be permitted?
That's probably about, if you use the Rumbo as a model, that's a little less than 2 of the size of their outlots. Of course, their outlots are more parallel to 36, 37.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't have much frontage on 36, 37. So could it be divided into more than one lot or proposed to be divided in the future in more than one lot or more than one use on that lot kind of thing? It could be. It could be. It's big enough to accommodate that. It's just unknown at this time. But the text would set the parameters within which that could happen.
Any other questions for staff?
Lance, can you get back over the pedestrian connectivity part? As far as the bike path on the north side of Biltmore?
Yes,
And then you're gonna have a sidewalk on the south side?
correct.
Can we just have one for a shared use, or is that because of the extension, the potential for an extension on Biltmore?
Well, our code typically requires a sidewalk on both sides of public streets because the bike plan has a bike path on the north side is the reason sidewalk on the south side. And if it gets extended further east and west, the sidewalk will be extended also. Not knowing what those uses may or may not be in the future.
Right, so it's basically a bike path in lieu of a sidewalk on that side of Biltmore. Also, the part of Biltmore that's built down near Dairy Queen and such, and the doctor's office does have sidewalks. So this would
So it'd be the connectivity.
eventually connect, have
Consistent.
pedestrian connections on both sides of the road.
You're saying our current max on two-story is 35 feet, or is that just current?
Height is 35 feet.
Okay.
And
There's no
R6
max on
does-
stories. 35 feet is the R6 base requirement,
Yeah.
which would typically allow 3 stories.
Mhm.
In this case, really the top story that you see is within that height, well within that height district. What is not is really to have a higher pitched roof. They could propose a flat roof or something certainly less pitched and be in conformance with that 35 feet. But at least in our estimation of staff, the higher pitched roof is a better, higher design, if you will, than either of those 2 alternatives I just mentioned.
And I'd agree, I mean, at least a 612, I mean,
Correct.
wouldn't want,
Yeah, that's what you see
Wouldn't
on
wanna see
the
anything.
highest end homes.
yeah.
Any other questions for staff?
So that would be 6 of the 10 buildings would be looking at 100% for the building material, I believe.
I think 6 of the 10, we recommend the elevation that fronts the public street to be
Okay.
higher than as proposed.
What we're trying to capture is the idea that the elevations that face the public would have 100% natural materials. Recall that natural materials aren't just brick and stone under our standard, but they do not include vinyl. They include things like hardy plank, siding, which is probably presumably what they would do if that would be the condition, or something, something like that. But the facades that are facing interior to themselves, basically then, as part of the PMU process, there's not necessarily a point in dressing those up any further when they're facing themselves, in our opinion.
It was, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It was stated that the traffic impact study is in staff's hands. Have we had a chance to chew on that some, or?
That's essentially approved. We received an initial submittal couple months ago, and had a few comments on that, and received a revised submittal, I believe, on the 24th of July, just a week or so ago.
Okay.
And I anticipate that will be approved short order.
No, I just wanted to ask that when you presented them with the idea of the 100% material, natural material, how did they accept that, or was there a response to that?
There was not a staff level acceptance of that. At this point, we did discuss that on this and the other project, and so that I think comes as no surprise as a recommended condition to the applicant. They can answer for themselves, but we did discuss that. And so I think they were comfortable with their submission as they submitted it, and looked for your discussion and council's discussion on that item. But again, you can certainly ask them, and sure they'll give you their opinion on that as well. But I think that's consistent with what we discussed. Part of the reason for that is these buildings are a little bit over the height limit. They are a little bit bigger. I think they're doing quite a lot to mitigate the size of that with the mounting and the landscaping. But then again, on the public sides of the buildings, it could make sense to, even if it was the elevations that we see here mixed with hardy plank, or perhaps if there was a little bit more stone on those sides and some hardy plank or some mixture thereof, could present a more palatable and certainly more upgraded than our base code requires if they add stone and brick public facing facade.
The only reason I say that is because that part of 3637 is going to become, it's already a main thoroughfare corridor into our community. So I'd like to see, a nice presentation on new properties like that.
Would the applicant please like to come forward? If you could please state your name and your address for the record.
Steve Kuckler, 94 North Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio. Joe Thomas, Metro Development, 470 Old Worthington Road, Westerville, Ohio.
Do you guys have anything you'd like to add to staff's presentation?
Actually, they did a very thorough job, obviously explaining our property and density, and as well as the overall design of our community. Just, from being up here for the first time in front of this board, I want to kind of go over what our community has to offer to the city of Delaware, and just kind of go over actually the community aspects as themselves, and then we'll grow upon that as far as the other aspects as it pertains to the overall city of Delaware and Delaware County. Just to give you a list of items within our community ourselves as far as the clubhouse and amenities. First of all, we offer 24-hour emergency services. In our clubhouse, we have a lounge with fireplace, a professional cardio center, gaming area, resort style pool, resident business office, which contains desktop computers, printers, scanners, fax machines, residence coffee bar. We have a outdoor kitchen with gas grill, and we also have a 24-hour, 7 days a week package locker system for our residents in our community. Some of the site amenities that Lance touched upon, but want to go in greater detail. We have numerous leisure trails, outdoor activity areas, dog park, pedestrian connections to the shopping, which of course goes across 3637. Some of the apartment amenities that are important to us is we have built-in microwaves, 9-foot ceilings, oversized walk-in closets, luxurious carpeting. We have private patios and balconies, stainless steel appliances, washer and dryers included in each suite. We have brushed nickel fixtures and accents, granite countertops, reservoir-style sink basins, and 42-inch espresso cabinetry and tile backsplashes. And then our overall rents are ranging from $900 to $1,200. Just to give you kind of an idea of our resident profile. These are going to be renters by choice, which would be seniors and young professionals. The expected target income for the residents in a 1-bedroom unit is $40,000 and up. Expected target household income for the 2-bedroom is $75,000. We do a background investigation, credit history, sexual offender investigation, housing history. The market area for these apartments will be from the city of Delaware, surrounding unincorporated areas of central Delaware County. And kind of the boundary areas are Hills Mill Road to the north, 71 north and south to the east, Cheshire Road to the south, and Dublin and Sauter River to the west. Just to, from a standpoint of, and I think Mr. Eflin touched on this directly as far as the need for this type of housing in the city of Delaware, Delaware County, and Central Ohio as a whole. We have a long history. We've been building multifamily, single-family, commercial properties, golf courses, golf clubs, warehouse buildings, major infrastructure improvements in Delaware County since 1968. Our market has changed considerably throughout the history of, in the real estate market. We had been building multifamily for some time up until roughly about 2001, when the housing market really overtook the multifamily market from a standpoint of the lending practices. Essentially, lenders were able to lend money at a rate that homeowners were outpacing the rental market. Well, with the 2007 market crash that continued up until 2010-11, that market has changed dramatically to an overwhelming multifamily apartment market, and it continues to this day. There's just the idea that now the renters are more insistent as far as the community aspects. They like to have the large clubhouses, the large spacious pool areas, the walking trails, the amenities throughout the communities, dog parks, community gathering areas within the community. So we try to make that happen within our communities, and we really pay more attention to our residents each and every day on what they're insisting that their communities contain, as well as close proximity to goods and services, shopping, medical offices, business offices. Their employment is probably one of our first and foremost aspects of our community, is they like to be centrally located and do not like to have a long commute to their place of employment. They consistently like to be within 20 minutes of their commute between their home and their place of employment. So this is a nice market for them to be in within the central Delaware County area, as well as the city of Delaware. So I'm here if you have any questions, and I appreciate your time, and looking forward to being part of the community. Thank you.
This proposed site project, do you have anything similar to this within the local area, or where's the closest?
The closest to this property would be on Gemini Parkway, off of the 71 corridor on the north side of Gemini Parkway, north of the mall, next to Church of Polaris. Or if you go 23 south at Lozelle and 23, it would be on the east side. That's called Remington Woods. Back to Gemini, that's called North Park Place.
Okay.
And they're all 3-story communities with a clubhouse of similar size and similar design, with a pool and the walking trails. So those would be the most immediate type of products that's consistent with this product.
And those are a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units?
They're almost identical.
What are you getting for rents in those?
Those are approximately $900 to $1,200 with the rents, some being higher depending on the area location within the community. We just set the base rent here now at $900 to $1,200 within this community.
Okay.
And then aspects of where they're located on the community, you know, pond facing unit versus a parking facing unit, there's higher rents or lower rents. But the median level, nothing goes below 900, but it can go in excess of 1,200 depending where it's
For the
located.
1 bedrooms?
900 being the 1 bedrooms, 1,200 being a mixture of the 2 bedrooms.
Minimum for the 2 bedroom.
Correct. And they're all, they all do have patios or balconies. So
Square footage on 1 bedroom is
670. And that's a part of our business that is consistent throughout our market. We measure up to the other 1 bedrooms throughout Central Ohio as far as the size, the rent structure, the amenities, you know, be it the walk-in closet, larger bathrooms, bigger bedrooms, and then of course the gourmet kitchen style. So it's just the 670, 677 kind of square footage is our market, and we know that that fits right into the square footage of the what basically people are looking for in that area.
What's your vision for the outlot? So right now, it looks like it's just a green space.
Correct.
What do you see that being 5, 10 years down the road potentially?
Well, you know, we approached Jim Gill with Chestron. He's looking at an opportunity there directly to the west of us, which would be something compatible, or it would be a position that he can actually use as part of his future plan for the area. He's mentioned, you know, a dealership, not like the one he has now, but something along a Subaru or Honda or, you know, not necessarily Toyota dealership, but expanding that area. So that was one opportunity for us. We know there's other available retail outlots, commercial lots in the area. However, we thought it was more compatible with the 3637 than it would be for multifamily to be located in that area. But we do not have a definite user for that lot currently. But we understand we have to come back for any kind of preliminary plans as we are here tonight on the apartment. So it's more of a holder in our market.
Okay.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, what excites Mr. Gill and his family and some of the, and then that property behind the storage facility is the $1 million here Metro is going to build to get that access, so you can actually get access back into some of those commercial sites.
So what would the cost difference be if you had to do these buildings 100% natural rather than using the vinyl that you want to, or they're facing each
It
other?
would be additional $38,000 per building. We, you know, our proposition to staff, you know, up front, we've been working on this for some months, is, you know, we're putting in a large investment into the community by building the north-south connection road off of 3637, which is not only access for our community, you know, our particular community, but as a whole. And then, of course, the Biltmore Drive connection east and west. So overall, that investment alone is roughly $1 million. To be exact, or to have the estimates from the engineers, we're looking at approximately $968,000 for that investment on that road alone. And then we also have other items that we don't consistently deal with within our apartment communities, and that's the sanitary and water tap fees and the impact fees. So in this community alone, we're looking at an additional $13,275 per unit of building in the city of Delaware versus any other suburb in Central Ohio. So that fee, you know, the public road and then the other infrastructure fees as the capacity charges go is you know, it's a large investment. So we you know, done our research on the city of Delaware. Throughout the city of Delaware, a multifamily community of this size, they have the product that's a mixed use product of exterior elevations of vinyl, stone and brick or shake. You know, I went and made like a list of product just for alone, like the Willowbrook Retirement Center, they're on 37, is all vinyl. I mean, there's no natural materials part. It's all vinyl with other rare natural material. Troy Farms is all vinyl. Traditions at Carson Farms is all vinyl. And then, of course, the preserve at Quail Pass, the Redwood Ranch, is all vinyl. There are some natural material communities throughout the city of Delaware, but it's more consistent with the ranch condominiums and then higher end single family homes. So that's kind of where the type of product we're putting on the exterior building. We agree we'll do the city of Delaware, I believe it's blue vein limestone. We'll consistently keep that product. We do have a mixture, large panels of all stone. We do have a wainscot surrounding the entire building of all stone. We have other panels on the building that are stone, and then we also have in the gable areas, it's all shake siding. So it's not just vanilla vinyl siding, as everybody was, but we would even entertain a higher end or committing to a higher end vinyl product, as other communities in the area have committed to in the past, of the 4-4 vinyl as far as the thickness of the vinyl product. But the investment we're trying to make in this particular location is in the public infrastructure as far as the roadways are concerned. From a public perception of this product, I appreciate the comment about this being the corridor and this being the front of entrance to the city of Delaware. But I believe there'll be more development on 36, 37 that will necessarily buffer this community from any kind of visual aspect of seeing this. And then again, the approximate travel miles per hour along 36, 37 is probably roughly 55 miles per hour. So I would dare to say that most people driving the corridor would not know the difference between a vinyl or a hardy plank product on that particular item.
Unless you're stuck at the point. Well,
I hope you guys are fixing that. I would like to also add.
Just 6 million short.
I will delete this street and give you $1 million. Fair? But anyways, also the long-term wear and tear, long-term maintenance of the vinyl product has shown to stand up for a long period of time over other natural materials as far as the ultimate look of the product for a longer term than it would be any other kind of natural materials. So. That doesn't go without saying that we can't discuss further on this issue. So I appreciate it.
I guess I'm just a little surprised at the price for the square footage. When they said affordable apartments, this beyond shocked me. I know you see this a lot in Columbus. I'm just a little surprised to see you trying to put it here. And I understand you have all these amenities and they have to be paid for in some way. We've just dealt with this in another department, so I'm just surprised that here we go again. I was at a conference in Texas, a mayor's conference, and we visited apartment buildings down there. It was in Austin. And these developers are required to build either 10 or 20% of their apartments at a very affordable rent. In this city, we have less than 3% unemployment. Our restaurants won't build here because we have no people from Delaware that can afford to live here. We pull from Marion surrounding counties. We struggle every day, our restaurants do, our lower incomes. They have nowhere to go. I think that's why Delaware has so many slumlords, because they have a much lower price for rent. We need to have apartments, not saying all of them, but a certain percentage of them that these people can afford to live in that have a decent housing. And I really want council to take a hard look at this and ask our developers, when you're building these, I'm not asking you to, I'm asking your opinion, but a certain percentage of them, and they would be built up. I mean, as their incomes come up, then they go to the next level. That's what they did in Texas, and I visited different levels of those apartments, and the people that lived there were thrilled to have them.
No, I agree. There is a, we tread a very tricky slope on that kind of discussion, because we're dealing not only with the municipality, such as yourselves, but also dealing with the residents in the area. And when you start talking about the type of residents on affordable housing side, it really, I mean, from a standpoint, it kind of paints an ugly picture. But I understand the
I'm
need.
not talking Section 8.
I'm not talking Section 8 either, but when you start talking about the subsidized housing or the percentage of housing that's reserved for a certain, I guess, from an economic bracket. So we have no issue with providing, we just have not done that in the past. We are market rate apartments. We're very successful. I think our biggest claim to fame is we have a roughly return rate of our residents of roughly 60%. So each resident that lives there continues to renew their lease 60% of the time.
But $900, we're looking at almost $20 an hour. Almost $25 an hour that person's making. You know, affordable at that rate is, they can probably get into a house. I understand some of the people working for short term, don't get me wrong. But, you know, Delaware has a lot of people that are working for less than $16 an hour. And our problem is that we're not addressing that at all. I mean, there's no place for it. And the other problem we face with, as Carol said, is that the restaurants and even the businesses here in town, we're dealing with the people who are making $15 to $16 an hour, okay? Not the people who are making $20, $25, $30 an hour. Some places are, but the majorities aren't. The majorities are working with people living here. You know, so I think, I guess, I don't know if it's you or staff or it's us or whatever, but affordable housing, I don't think is $900 or $1,200 a month. I mean, you have a right to charge for your stuff that you want to charge, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you should change your business plan at all. I'm saying that, you know, I guess the staff, in all fairness, affordable is not above $25 an hour income. I don't think there's a lot of plants in Delaware that are paying $25 an hour. I could be wrong. There may be. So I think that when we talk about affordable, you know, maybe that's something staff ought to look at and decide what's that affordability, what is that level? So when you come to us and you say, you know, it's a very nice complex, don't get me wrong. You know, it's just not, I don't think we call it affordable. That's just my feeling.
I didn't call it affordable. Just for the record, I called it labor force housing. Very carefully choosing my words in that regard. Because in talking to our economic development professionals, and that's where I'm getting my basis of my information, the average salary for the industrial park kind of area and those type of uses is around that $17 an hour. And this was the kind of price range today. Like part of this is also Delawareans coming along to the thought process that today this is a labor force housing. Hey, I remember having an apartment and stretching myself thin at $210 a month. So okay, and thinking, hey, if the car breaks down, I can still walk to where I need to get to, or a bus stop. So I get it. With respect to your broader question and point, which I think is a good one, for affordable housing, obviously every time that we have cases come in this room, again, we have members of the public here tonight, which I'm presuming not all are here to support this case. We'll find out in a few minutes. That's always a difficult question, whether we're talking about hotels and one lot being a parking lot, or we're talking about you know, this kind of product or apartments somewhere else, or even sometimes single family subdivisions, as you know. So that is a question that as a community we need to wrestle with in a real way, knowing that that's fine at a 50,000 foot level, but all things are local. And when you bring a project forward that people live around, sometimes circumstances change, especially in their mind. That's totally understandable. I would say we have a comprehensive plan process going on in our community now, and that is the perfect venue to talk about that kind of policy decision moving forward, not just amongst ourselves that deal with it every day, but with our citizenry, and see what they think ultimately. So
I wasn't criticizing staff at all.
no, I understand.
I just, you
know,
because it really has no bearing on what you brought to us.
Yeah,
I guess it's a.
there's obviously in this market and this just central Ohio, there's a lot of discussion about affordable housing.
Yeah, what it actually is affordable.
Well,
housing.
yeah, there's programs that builders are working with, and I don't know if they discussed that in the Austin market, but there is some partnerships between municipalities and developers to be able to, I guess, financially model that to make it work.
Yeah.
So it's not just an economics of just the builder, but there is a partnership between the municipality and the builder on certain items that get you to that number.
And it just wasn't too many years ago that we talked about we needed something else besides just starter homes.
Right.
Okay, so I guess we're coming in full circle back around. Maybe we need some starter.
Good point.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just a quick, since we've got members of the public here, can they speak to, the location of the proposed basins, both being on the east side of the property, as far as their location type of thing? Is there, the drainage part rolling that way? Is there a north, south, east, west?
The site is pretty flat, but it does generally slope to that direction, and just off the southeast corner of the site near that southeast basin is a drainage swale, fairly decent sized swale that will receive the drainage from the site. And so that's sort of why, I'm presuming that's why they chose that location for their pond.
Yeah, what we have traditionally called the mill run is over to the east.
Yeah, we collect a lot of water that's coming just off of Bowtown Road, further to the west of us. Roughly 2.5 acres of water's tributary to us off-site. So we collect it. It basically runs along the south side of Bowtown Road and then collects into one pond and then overflows into the pond. In the general outlet of this area, there's a stream just to basically our southeast corner is a stream where it outlet into. So gravity-wise and as far as topography, it goes basically from that northwest corner.
Stream, that's O'Brien ditch.
I apologize, but the storm outlet for the area happens to be that ditch area. So but that's why it's those ponds are designed where they are.
Okay, thank you.
And we want to detain not only water that is on site but off site, so it doesn't burden any other property owners surrounding area when it outlets. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, is there any member of the public here who'd like to speak on this particular case?
Your display boards in the front.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening. I'm Wendy Caldwell. I live at 1509 Bowtown Road, which is right across north of Bowtown from this property. The best way to explain it is the fire lane you see will dump out into my driveway. So given the past that we've had with this property and development options, I want to go on record very early on and ask that fire lane only access be gated and locked like JBS does theirs, where there's no chance of traffic going there, because that is exactly right across from our driveway. Secondly, thank you both for acknowledging the affordability. That word was used in describing this. I know several single parents that work at Kohl's, Walmart, Myers, that do not make $20 an hour, that there's no way they're going to afford, let alone the $40,000 income they're requiring. That's $20 an hour. The density's high. It's a nice complex. It looks good on paper, but a 10-foot mound versus a 3-story building is a big difference. I think compared to the 2003, 2006 original layout that was brought before us before with this owner, this is a nice concept, but I think it's too much. I think the building's being 3 stories. I don't know what the fire department would say about that, but I think 3 stories is a bit much. I think they're putting an awful lot in this space. Behind me sit all of the neighbors. I personally can only speak for myself, but I never received a letter for this meeting. We also didn't even know that the other property my husband spoke about, Apology, we didn't know that was on the docket either. For the Bowtown Road 3-parcel single family, that butts up to our back. We didn't even know about that either. So those are the minor issues I wanted to address. I know that development is inevitable and we knew it was coming, but we just would like to work with a few minor details to make it affordable for the people who do live here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I actually have a list of folks who signed up to speak, so I'll just call everyone out. Chris Acker.
I was going to go last, but I'll be glad to go now.
We get to go second.
Hey,
Just state your name and your address for the record.
before I get started, can we bring the picture
Could you
back
could
up
you
there?
could you please state your name and address
Yeah,
for the record?
Chris Acker. I live at 90 Lackey South Old State Road. Can you bring the picture back up, the diagram that shows the plot and the land to the west or east of it? That right there, that'll work just great. Members of the Planning Commission, Mayor Regal, thanks for giving me this opportunity to address this, a very important issue for those that live out on 36 and 37 to the east of Delaware. I would like to spend just a few minutes discussing the Metro Development Rezoning Amendment for the Seattle Housing Apartment, the 240 units that we're currently talking about, and I will not address 160 units that's going to come up later behind Tri-Township. That's going to also be a problem. I would ask that you consider our concerns and deliberations concerning any rezoning of this property. I would like to lightly discuss some of those issues, being construction, traffic, infrastructure, water surface runoff, schools, and variances associated with this request. These are primarily the concerns of those of us who live east of Delaware or in the communities serviced by State Route 521, Bowtown Road, State Route 36 and 37, Glen Road, Plunkett Road, and Baker Road, which I know is outside the city limits of Delaware, but they all feed into 36 and 37 to get into Delaware. The construction of Village Gate Apartments, the Kensington Place subdivision, the Delaware Preserve, North Lake Summit rental properties, which I haven't heard mentioned yet, 600 rental units across from the Cracker Barrel. Myers Shopping Center, Evans Farm, which I'll mention even though it's the southern part of the county, but when the Glen Road Parkway goes in, I guarantee you they're coming north to get on 36 and 37 to get into Delaware. Cheshire Crossing, a new subdivision on Lackey Old State Road where I live, but the road's closed down right now because they're putting turn lanes in for another subdivision. They're all under construction. Not to mention the Mammoth Oasis Water Park, if it ever does go in and 5,000 employees go out there like they say. The obvious question I have to present to this group is, how much is enough? Traffic. All these subdivisions and businesses feed directly or ancillary into State Route 521, 36 and 37 East. We, the county residents, do not expect the city administration to know about or even worry about construction projects outside the city limits. It's not within your scope. But those of us who live east of Delaware are definitely concerned about the additional construction projects, both within the city limits and those in the county east of Delaware. Today, without further development, traffic is at a standstill. The mayor mentioned it's kind of slow. No, it's a standstill between the hours of 3 and 7 p.m. getting into town, 5 days a week. Between the two proposed subdivisions at Village Gate and the Seattle House Apartments, I calculate, based on the number of apartments they're talking about putting in 800 additional vehicles. If you know somebody that has a family that only has one vehicle, let me know, because everyone I know has got more than one vehicle. Trying to get in Bowtown Road, State Route 521, 36 and 37 twice a day. Bowtown Road will have to be closed at the fire department. How are you going to get out of that? How are you going to get out of Bowtown Road onto 36 and 37 with all these apartments? There'll have to be a traffic light at 521 where in Bowtown Road. That's a hazard already, just due to the fact that it's not a 90-degree intersection. You have to look almost 120 degrees over your right shoulder if you're coming off Bowtown Road to get onto 521. So that's going to have to be a traffic light. Not to mention the fire department and the issues there. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I surmise what will occur if we have an additional 800 vehicles mixed in that mixing bowl of traffic out there. I also think the residents that live on Vernon Avenue are going to be in for a shock, because you can access Vernon Avenue from Kensington Way right now. Most people don't know that. But as soon as they find out, Vernon Avenue is going to turn into a thoroughfare, trust me. Fixing the Point underpass would be wonderful, but it's not going to fix your problem. I know that, you know that, the planning board knows that. It's beyond the scope of this panel to address the final solution, but make no mistake, it can only be fixed with time, money, citizen cooperation, and a bypass. That's the only way you're going to fix it. Those are the issues for future planning and deliberations far beyond our reason for being here tonight. While a traffic study is laudable and necessary, I would think a closer look at other factors is just as important. Where's the surface water going to go? Please don't tell me we're going to put it into the O'Brien ditch. Please don't tell me it's going into holding ponds, which I did see. Please tell me that if the project is built, the city will provide storm sewers. Let me tell you why. This area will primarily be under asphalt. The water's going to go into 2 holding ponds. When the holding ponds get full, which they will, the water's going into the O'Brien ditch, which goes under 37, collects all the water from Kroger's and the Meyer Shopping Center. And it's full already. I know because we own this farmland over here, and we have trouble getting rid of the water already. So if you don't have some kind of a storm sewer system for that development, as opposed to holding ponds and trying to pump it into the O'Brien ditch, you're asking for trouble. And I don't know how many of you know Roger Glenn, but Roger will be happy to come in and explain what I'm trying to explain, but he is much better at it. And I don't know if we've taken a look at having soil and water, Delaware County Soil and Water look into this. I mean, I know it's a city project, it's not a county project, I completely understand that, but Soil and Water knows what they're doing when it comes to drainage. And they can provide a lot of input if we just ask them. I know it's a county organization, but this project is right up against the county line. It's out of the city limits. I mean, right at the city limits. Has anybody taken a look at the schools? We're talking about how many apartments in here? Has anybody had any idea? Is there any look to see how many kids are going to go into Congress School because of this, or into Hayes High School? I don't know. But I'll guarantee you, you're not going to rent 240 apartments and have no kids. It's not going to happen. There are health issues. We just built we just had the church build a facility out there that's I don't know if it's in the city or not. No, it's in the county. But they have a holding pond. There are so many Canadian geese in that holding pond in the fall and spring. You don't even want to, you can't walk around it, because if you do, you're going to have something all over your shoes you're not going to like. And if you have 2 holding ponds there, the geese don't care. They're going to thank you very much. But it's going to be a health issue, I can guarantee it. The city and the county and the townships all have zoning restrictions and regulations. These amendments set forth by duly elected representatives of the people are not there for parties to apply for and receive variances at will. Either we have the amendments that we all live by or we don't. To have it any other way leaves one with a taste of favoritism, a feeling that there are two sets of amendments, one for big construction, big money, and one for the common folks. I mentioned this as I've been informed that Metro Development is already pushing, and I found out tonight it's true, for variances in density, height, and I don't know what else. But if we have rules, let's stick to the rules. Why are we allowing everybody to come in and ask for a variance on this stuff? Look, I have no problem with developments. I know you got to have them. I know the city has to grow. I know there has to be a tax base. But look at the Sawmill Parkway on 42. You can drive down that thing for 5 miles and not see a building or a house. Nobody's building out there. Now, maybe something in the future, but this would look great on Route 42 near Sawmill Parkway. Easy access to Columbus, easy access to Delaware, and would relieve the traffic situation, at least until we get something done in the order of a bypass. In closing, I would like to speak for the vast majority of citizens of the county, and especially those who live in the path of this ever-increasing residential and business sprawl. All we ask is that all aspects of the expansion, the infrastructure, the transportation, the education, the surface runoff, all be examined closely in detail before making any zoning decision. For it is us, the citizens on the east side of Delaware and living on Route 36 and 37, just outside the city, who are going to pay the price for any decision that turns our homes into a parking lot. We are the ones who must live with the results of not getting it right. Perhaps it's time to call for a moratorium on expansion. I don't know, but I do know that if you don't build the infrastructure first, you're asking for trouble if you try to build the facilities and then go for the infrastructure. I mean, if we think we're going to build up east of town in the hopes of getting the point fixed, the mayor's already said we're 6 million behind. Well, we're 6 million now. What if the economy goes to crap in the next 5 years? We could be 12 million down, and the price is going to go up. It's not going down, the cost of that fixing the point. So perhaps it's time to call for a moratorium. I don't know, until all the issues encompassing a myriad of problems are addressed with a plume. Perhaps it's time to build the infrastructure first before the buildings. I served 39 years in the military, and I came away with one inexplicable truth. You can have the best plan in the world, but if you can't support it logistically, you're going to fail. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me this time to address issues important to those of us who reside east of Delaware. I would ask that whatever you decide, please consider the impact of that decision on the citizens that live along the busy highway east of Delaware and on their daily situation first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acker. Mr. Acker did a really good job of going through what I think is a lot of your concerns this evening. I'll continue to go down through the list. If you have something new to add beyond what Mr. Acker's already added, I will invite you to come up. But if you don't feel like you need to add anything, that's fine as well. Next person on the list is Nikki Acker.
Not related.
Okay. Diane, okay.
I won't talk as long as my husband did, although he did a good job.
So you are related.
So just please state your name and address for the record, and if you could avoid repeating anything, that would be appreciated.
I'll try, and I'll be really short. My name's Nikki Acker, and I live at 90 Lackey Old State Road, and we have 30 acres. That is two Nutters are right next to the Seattle project, and then we have the 30 acres right next, so we're still in there close. My husband went over almost everything. What I would like to address is, of course, the traffic situation, and I don't know if anyone has thought about this. I'm sure somebody has. everybody gets paid for a job. Once the construction starts, at the point, I would like to know where all this traffic is going. I mean, you've already approved some right back of Myers. Now this is up for approval. Okay, make this short. Once construction does start on the point, if you are coming from I-71 and you're going north, there is 3B&K. It'll take you to Kilburn. The next road is Plunkett to Jumper to 521. If you're going back in 521, you have an underpass. That would be not good for trucks. You can cross over Harris Road and go to 42. The last road going north will be 521. 521 also has the underpass. So you can't get back into Delaware unless you go Harris Road 42 and another underpass. If you're coming from I-71 and you're going west into Delaware, on the south side, you have Africa Road. That will take traffic right to Polaris. The next road is Lackey, also take you right to Polaris.
Totally understand. Do you have any traffic that's relevant to the case at hand tonight? I apologize for cutting you off, but.
Short time, promise. And either one of those can take you to 23. The next road would be Glen Road. Glen Road would take you to Curve Road and eventually to 23. And those are the roads that once this construction starts, that's how you're going to get the traffic off 36 and 37 until this is finished. So when you're saying, okay, for the buildings back of Myers and this new one and the one that's going back to the fire department, where is all this traffic going to go? Because there's no good way to get the traffic anywhere all the time this construction at the point is going on. So I agree with my husband. Maybe it is time for a moratorium until the traffic problems can be solved. And I noticed that the planning for Myers and the planning for this one, bicycle paths were mentioned about. Maybe that's the only way that traffic will be getting around the east side is on bicycles. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Nutter. Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Diane Nutter, 3273 Madoma Drive, Columbus, Ohio, 43204. I am here tonight as the property manager for my family farm, which is located adjacent to and east of this development. It's the area bounded by the yes and further east to the yellow line, that section of the property adjacent to this development. My family has owned this property since the 1930s or 40s. My grandparents have worked with the Soil and Water Conservation District guys since at least the 1950s, perhaps earlier, to protect and improve and preserve the drainage. So my concerns are very much also about water and drainage. With the Meyer development, it significantly impaired our farm land, the use for farming and the drainage. We had many tile blowouts, 4 feet across, 6 feet across, 4 by 6 feet and 4 feet deep, as a result of the subsurface drainage not being adequately protected and preserved during that development, and that continues to today and probably into the future. We also have standing water in 2 fields that limit the area that can be farmed because the subsurface drainage tile were damaged and not protected, not preserved during construction. I'm a city girl. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I'm learning, and I want to try and, I think we all would agree with making stuff better as we go forward. The city engineers are wonderful with city development. The Soil and Water Conservation District folks are the ones that have 75 years of expertise in farmland drainage and farmland water management for farming. So my request would be for the developer and the city to please work with the Soil and Water Conservation District to review and sign off on the plans to get the best drainage outcomes, not only for surrounding farmland. It's a difficult transition when you've got development abutting up against farmland. It presents new opportunities. It also presents new challenges. So I would love it if the city would work with them to review and sign off on the plans, because all of us only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. So that would be my request. And I also am very concerned about the overflow drainage from the holding ponds, as Mr. Acker brought up the points about city storm sewers. I think it's very important to protect and preserve the drainage for the existing land, farmland, other land, preserve the integrity of the creeks and the watersheds that are around this project and that will be affected by it. The Moody Ditch, the O'Brien Ditch, the English 246, the Mill Run Creek runs right beside this property. I just hope that the project will be managed wisely, and the integrity of the watersheds and the drainage, both surface and subsurface, will be protected and preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly Quinn. If you could just state your name and your address for the record.
Mayor Riggle, Mr. Simpson, gentlemen. Holly Quinn, President of the Delaware Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Chamber this evening, 32 South Sandusky Street, right behind you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening on behalf of the Chamber. I have some comments that I prepared, and then a couple of comments that I thought of afterwards, if I might, based on some things I've heard here this evening. So the spirit of the Chamber's mission, which in part speaks to our responsibility to promote and advocate quality of life through orderly growth and development in our community, we believe has a champion in the metro development plans you have before you this evening. One of the issues the Chamber has identified as going hand in hand with intelligent, orderly growth is a variety of appropriate housing options that serve to accommodate not only the area's current workforce needs, but to be of the type and caliber to attract the commercial development that can and must follow. The Chamber's board has vetted High Point Place and Seattle House and found them to be both great fits for our community. Aside from the obvious financial benefits to the city, the development provides an attractive infrastructure, both literally and figuratively, that can be leveraged to attract the kind of commercial development that the area at which the development as proposed has long awaited. One of the reasons, and this is a little different slant on our support, is one of the reasons the Chamber is so confident that this project should be given the green light for the design and the proposed density is the reputation of the folks behind it. Those supporting the project and those designing the project are well known in the community and have many years and many projects and many dollars demonstrating how they maintain their property after the sale, so to speak. Most notably, and you received, I understand, a letter from Mr. Gill. I have not read it, but I understand he supports the project. We've spoken about it. His family's been in Delaware for 50 years. One look at his property and his standards are clear and can be trusted. Like the 18 members of the Chamber Board of Directors, he is a man of integrity with a long history of giving back to this community, proving his interest and commitment to what this community looks like in the long term. The likes of the Gill family would never endorse a quick fix that they didn't believe would stand the test of time, just as their properties do. I know that Mr. Gills and his family have vetted this project as well as the chamber has. Nothing that you saw from the developer this evening was news to me. We vetted this project with them. The board finds the questions of density should be resolved in favor of the project and applauds the private sector for their willingness to make such a significant investment in an area that has long needed it. The city is investing millions to fix the point, and this development will be a perfect partner, providing a vital response in a beautiful, well-thought-out living community. We encourage the commission to move swiftly to its recommendation, and we look forward to inviting you to the ribbon cutting. Now, having said that, I understand that the folks behind me live next to this property. I'm no stranger to development. I'm not a spring chicken. I've been around the block a few times or two, and I know this. I know that if there is a moratorium on development, then we are telling people what they can do with their property. If I own 30 acres and the city has said, we're going to stop development because people are tired of traffic, then you've essentially told me I can't sell my property to anyone else. I know that if we tell a developer that he has to pay $13,000 for a tap fee and use natural materials and plant trees, but he can only charge $500 a month for rent, now we're telling the private sector what they can do for development. And I guarantee you, if you have a development that's going to charge $500 for rent, you're going to have a lot more people sitting behind me in this room than we have today. We can't tell the private sector to solve social issues. I trust that Metro Development has done their homework. And whether we like development or not, it's moving forward. People want to live in Delaware because you've developed this wonderful city. We all have. And there's a balance, there's a fragile balance in a community, and it has to be between the private sector, the public sector, between development, between residential. When you live in a community that doesn't have enough commercial development, then the kind folks behind me are supporting the schools to the 98% that they are in the Olentangy School District. You need the commercial development to balance that. I live and breathe every day of my life workforce development with the employers that I work with. And I have employers who are turning away business because they don't have the workforce. And yes, $900 to $1,200 a month is appropriate housing. It isn't to me. I wouldn't make a $1,200 a month house payment, but then I'm 62 years old. So, we come from a whole different era. But the folks who are out on the east or the west, these housing developments, these young kids are paying $1,200 a month in a mortgage payment. So a rent payment, that's a different mindset today. It's not the private sector's responsibility to provide housing for my daughter who's a barista in Detroit. And I don't mean to sound cruel. I don't mean that at all, because I wish somebody would put her up someplace nice, right? But the project you have before you is the private sector coming forward and spending millions of dollars. They've done their homework, and they're a developer to be trusted. The area is zoned appropriately, and they've put a lot back in the community, and the people who have vetted their project and supported it are the folks who, when you look at the balance in a community, you have a commercial development that employs, and when those employers are doing well, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, then you have employees who are giving back to the social programs and the Alzheimer's walks and this and that and all of those things, and everybody shares the burden when there's this balance. And nobody likes to be stuck in. I'm from Detroit. I spent a lot of time in Chicago getting into parking spaces that are half the size of my car. I know that stuff. I get it. I'm a city girl too. And development is hard. You can't develop it without developing it. So I know that, and it's happened in my own backyard in my life. So I get that. But that's why you're here. That's why this part of America works so well, because you're here to solve those issues. I do understand the soil and water issues. I was married to a civil engineer whose niche was soil and water, and so I get those whole pieces, and those are very legitimate. But I would urge you to think about the balance in the community, and thank you so much and to the folks behind me who live around this. I truly do understand where you're coming from. I do. But I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've reached the end of the list. Is there anybody else here who wishes to speak on this case tonight? Okay. Bring it back to the commission. I think there are a couple of questions that were asked during the process that I think we can get some more clarity to. Dave, we'll try to handle it without the applicant, but if we need the applicant, we can certainly bring them back up. One of the questions that was asked was regarding the access road that backs up to Bowtown. It was how that was going to be secured, that fire access.
Yeah, just for a bit of history, when the developer had initial concept plan, this was to be an actual driveway out to Bowtown Road, and after staff review and working with the developer, made sense to us to make this I think it was you, I think that was your comment, emergency only access to Bowtown Road, providing two accesses to Biltmore Drive and with the knowledge that Biltmore is going to continue and provide some other access in the future as well. So this would be only for emergency access. It would be signed that way. It would not be, it'd be a little wider than a bike path, but our fire department, our fire chief is pretty good about working with us anymore, and the commission knows this. I think the standard he'll go down to is about 20 feet wide to get the truck in and out. So if that gives any surety to everybody about the look of, it's not going to look like, our roads are bigger than 20 feet wide, first of all. Even our driveways are bigger than 20 feet wide in the city. Typically, we did have a conversation about gated and locked. Typically, with respect to response times, the fire department, EMS squads, when you gate and you lock something, it's more time for them to get on scene. And time is everything to them and everything to someone who's waiting for them. And so they typically don't prefer gated and locked. We have Village Gate, which is, I think, the only gated community in the city of Delaware. And that's been an issue with respect to that. So we typically don't even allow for gated communities anymore in the city of Delaware. And that's pretty typical moving around the country. I didn't realize that this lined up directly with your driveway. We actually moved it to the east a little bit. And so one of my questions to the applicant, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think we need him to come back up here, is could it be moved to the east a little bit more so it doesn't line up with your driveway, for one thing? It sounds like that might be something that you would want as the neighbors. It's not lined up with your driveway. But we will landscape it, sign it so that it's not inviting for the motor.
We also discussed some like knockdown balustrades for it.
We can discuss that with the fire chief. And again, we're a preliminary plan, so if this is approved, there'd be a final development plan process to go. And I think that's a good suggestion. Typically, they don't like to take a very expensive truck and drive it through obstacles if they can help it. But and you can appreciate that. But I think that's something we can discuss with them. Some of those bollards have come along a little bit in their reboundability.
Mm-hmm.
Joe?
Yes, I'll move it wherever you like.
Well, you asking me or you asking her? She would remove it, I think.
No, yes, we can continue to move it to the east. I don't see any objection as far as the land plan. You know, the only hurdle would be the pond. And I see there's plenty of room between the existing location as it's proposed in the pond to move it further to the east out of conflict with the driveway across the street. You know, from a standpoint of land planners just like symmetry, and they like to, you know, they're just always in the habit of putting opposing roads as they be in the same location as other roads, so there's not a conflict in, but this being only a fire lane, there's no issue of moving it either way.
That, Jonathan, would you generally agree with that? Just as the
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would
City
also add that the width maybe wouldn't even be 20 feet, Dave, maybe more, even 12 to 16 feet width the range.
Okay. So even less like a inviting road or even driveway at that width. So but we can work with the fire chief to make that just as minimal as possible. I will say their equipment is not getting any smaller.
That's true.
And I mean, just add a note for the fire department, this community is fully fire suppressed. So every unit has, the fire suppression inside units, as well as the community center. So it's, response time is one thing, but we also provide the opportunity for our residents to leave the unit with the understanding that there's full fire suppression. So.
That's a very important element to our fire chief. He usually leads every development project meeting with the request, if it's not required by the building code, which it would be in this case, I think, but to have fire suppression in the building.
Okay. And then mounding, we've talked a lot about mounding this year. So just to clarify, it's a 10-foot mound, and what's the minimum requirement on the plantings on top of the mound?
I think we have it at 6 foot.
6 foot, so it's a total 16-foot screening.
Yeah, at initial build, it would be a 6-foot screen, which a 10-foot mound is
it's pretty significant.
Pretty significant. Typically, we're in the 5 to 6 foot range when we do those mounds, but that's closer to, not quite as high, but closer to the mound that's behind Meyer in Mill Run, which is a pretty significant one. That one I think is about 15 feet high, if I remember correctly. It's 10 years ago, so. At least 10.
All right. And then in terms of notifications, we've heard a lot this year about notifications and folks not feeling like they're being notified. Just for the purpose of the audience, could you just talk about what the notification process and requirement is?
Yeah, sure. And that's typically we're hearing about that from people that are appearing at the hearing. So they're finding out and getting here somehow. So that's my first remark. You've heard me say that before, so that's good. That's the point. We want them here.
Signage.
The signage is, to me, I think of the next version of zoning code, we just get rid of specific mailings and notifications that way, because something, the post office is too slow or the mailing doesn't go to the right place. The sign, everybody sees the sign. I hear that more than anything. And of course, we're all moving to internet notifications as well. These are up on our website and those sorts of things, and that'll probably happen more and more and more as time passes. So, as an adjacent property owner, you should have received a direct mailing. I don't know why right here. You may not have, so I'd have to look into that. But you're here, so that's important.
But did they go out?
They did go out. They went out twice, actually.
But even beyond just public notification, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We as a developer, we've had previous meetings with residents in Bowtown Road area. We've notified residents that are surrounding the property, as far as because of the immediate concern of the direct impact. So not only this property, but the next property we're going to discuss. We have discussed this property with those residents. And of course, our main concern is the buffering between us and the residents to the north and to the east. So
sure. We as staff did request that, they may do this anyway, but we did request that they have a meeting with residents to just see if there were any issues that they could address up front. I don't know how Joe notices those or whatever, but I know we had the meeting, some people came in. So.
All right, so we had a lot of concerns about traffic, and obviously we can't address traffic outside of this particular case. So for this particular property, it looks like we've got one main ingress egress off of 36, 37, which is a traffic light, which seems appropriate. With the connector road, where it intersects State Route 521, would that necessitate any signal or any, because it's just a stop sign right now to access that backage road, but once it's connected, would that necessitate any further?
Perhaps. So when, if and when the property to the west were to develop and extend that from this property to the existing Biltmore stub and get it connected to 521, that would certainly be looked at that time. But in a more overall sense, that intersection as well as Bowtown and 521 and 521 and 36 are already currently being looked at. I believe we're calling it a safety study that in addition to the safety study, the Point project will perhaps extend out into that vicinity and make improvements to that entire corridor. And so that certainly is being looked at. It wouldn't necessarily be part of this project.
Right.
But it is being looked at.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're well aware of a lot of those concerns, especially Bowtown 521.
And I know some of the folks may not like to hear this, but I think some of the history is of developments in the area that have contributed perhaps to the 521 and Bowtown intersection potential future improvement rather than Biltmore, which is very close right now to 36, 37. I think subject to change because this goes back years and there's the point and there's the point project and new engineering and stuff. But the idea was perhaps even Biltmore might have some sort of future access control, and Bowtown and 521 might become signalized to be determined. Nobody said that yet, but I think that was part of some of the history of like Kensington and Old Colony and even Village Gates Park.
Yeah, if I may add, in addition to the safety study and the point project, the intersection improvements at Bowtown and 521 are identified as a priority project on our thoroughfare plan.
Okay. Another item that came up was obviously the stormwater drainage. With any project, I know we always look at stormwater drainage, but do we look at how that impacts adjacent properties or anything further down the drainage way, so to speak?
Yeah, certainly. So a couple items of note concerning stormwater. One, the ponds will be designed to control the rate of release to no greater than the existing condition. So obviously when you convert a vacant farm field into a developed site like this, you are drastically increasing the amount of runoff that will leave the site. And so the purpose of the ponds are to hold that water and release it at a controlled rate to match or even be lower than the pre-existing or the existing condition. So that's a standard city requirement. As it relates to the county maintenance ditch that this will discharge to, I am aware of that. Was actually contacted today by the county, and the county engineer's office works in conjunction with Soil and Water on all the county maintenance ditch petitions and existing maintenance ditches. And so they would certainly be involved with any approval of new discharge points to those maintenance ditches. I was contacted actually today by the county, and we'll be returning that call perhaps by the end of the week and just getting them looped in. And so perhaps that would just be, they would be involved in the approval process. It wouldn't impact greatly their requirements. Perhaps the release rate of the pond outlet would be determined not only by our requirements, but the county's. So that would definitely be looked at. And that certainly is one of the major concerns of any development is stormwater runoff and impacts to adjacent properties.
Okay.
Yeah, as a developer, we work every day with Soil and Water in Delaware County in the area, so we have no objection to continuing that obligation as far as the outlet of these ponds into the ditch.
Okay. I think that's everything I had on my list that we're able to address.
You didn't talk about the geese.
The geese? Oh.
I don't like them either.
Geese are protected.
Yeah,
You can't do
what can we really
anything
do?
about it. You can't shoot
We
them.
can send them
you
over to
can't
Jim's
chase 'em.
house.
You can't
You
do a
have
thing
geese,
about the geese, believe
Send
me.
them to Mr. Halter's house. He's
Yeah,
accepting geese.
why not? You got my deer and everything else over there. No, you can't do anything about the geese. It's too bad, but you can't, it's almost illegal because they are a protected species. You can't put dogs out there to chase them away. You can't put poison out there. You can't do anything except walk in their lovely mess they leave behind.
I see he's done his research.
No, yeah, I have, because we've got a problem down in Columbus where I work down there. The sidewalks are covered, but there's nothing you can do. Because the geese won't go around with a little bag and pick up their poop.
Unheard of.
And as far as traffic goes, I've always told everybody, I moved in this town in 1962. Okay? So anybody that's moved in since 1962, you've caused a problem. I was already
There was a question on. school
And there
impact.
was talk about putting an outer belt in when 23 went in. But the city business people at that time did not want to put it on the outskirts. They wanted it inside. We got what we asked for.
Okay, you get an argument from Sandusky Street.
One other question that came up was about the schools. Would this already be on their radar, or would this be new development on their radar? Not on their radar, I
The
should say.
schools were obviously aware of the previous proposals and the zoning, and they've just come through an update cycle. They ask pretty much every year, both Olentangy and Delaware. They're very diligent about development updates, what's been approved, what's even conceptually coming forward. And so we had these already submitted, so I did mention both of these to the school district so they could take those into account, and I haven't heard any objection from them.
And we met, Mr. Cuckler and myself met with the superintendent previously to the prior to the application, and walked him through these two developments and explained to him the type of units, 1 and 2 bedrooms, are consistent numbers as far as the number of school-age children, and not to mention the dramatic amount of property taxes that this property, it generates roughly $600,000 in additional property taxes that everybody knows most of it goes to the school district. So as our numbers are pertaining to school-age children, it's roughly 10%. So if you look at this area, it would be roughly 24 students because of the type of units that we build and the type of amenities. We generally don't put playgrounds, which we never have put playgrounds. We don't, these aren't attractive for families because of the size of the units and the type of units. But there is always that case where you have a family that's looking to build a house in the area, and they do have temporary housing at our communities that we offer. And it's just an aspect of they're going to be there for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. So they're going to have their children in that area while they're building their house in the adjacent neighborhoods.
I can tell you, my kids will not fit 900 square feet.
No, no.
Not
Their
even close.
TV and their video games will not fit in the bed.
And their stuff.
So.
Their stuff. Okay. I think that covers everything I think that the public had to comment on. Please be brief.
The elderly, this is for the elderly, large portion of it will be for the elderly, I think I heard that earlier.
That's some of our target market.
Are there any elevators in these buildings?
No, but every first floor unit is what we call type A or type B, which is accessible units. Type A is a fully accessible unit for anybody with disabilities.
Mhm.
So that's your kitchens have the roll under kitchen sinks, the accessible dishwasher, microwaves, refrigerator, washer and dryer, and then of course the baths have the roll-in showers, the roll-under vanities, and then of course the doorways are wider and all your door handles are lower and their lever handles, your temperature or your thermostat's lower, your receptacles are higher, and your switches are lower. And then the same thing we call type B, which are adaptable accessible units, which is every first floor unit. Wider doorways, the thermostats are lower, switches are lower, receptacles are higher, and the doorways are wider. And then we have removable vanities, fronts, that allows to roll in. We have the blocking in the wall to add the grab bars, and then the kitchens are already accessible.
So it's safe to say 1/3 of your units can be fully handicap accessible?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. Moving this back to the commission. Does the commission have any additional questions? All right. If there are no additional questions, what is the wish of the commission?
Make a motion to approve 2018-1394
Second.
with all staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Prawl.
Second.
Second by Mr. Halter.
Mr. Badger?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Mr. Prawl?
Yes.
Mr. Volnick?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris?
Yes.
Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve 2018-1395 conditional use permit with any staff recommendations, if any.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Prawl and a second by Mr. Halter.
Mr. Mr. Badger?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Mr. Prahl?
Yes.
Mr. Volnick?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris?
Yes.
Chairman Simpson?
Yes.
A motion to approve 2018-1396 preliminary development plan with all staff recommendations sitting at 22 currently.
Motion by Mr. Prahl,
Second?
second by Mr. Halter.
Mr. Badger?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Mr. Prahl?
Yes.
Mr. Volnick?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
No.
Vice Chairman Mansoris?
Yes.
Chairman Simpson?
Yes. As a reminder, this is a preliminary development plan. A final development plan ultimately would have to come back through this commission. Dave, what's the next step on this particular case?
So this will proceed to the next city council meeting for its first reading. You can show up if you want to, but you don't have to. They'll literally, Lane will read the caption and the council will set the public hearings that are required for the following city council meeting.
August 27th.
Yeah, and they'll set, when we get closer to the agenda, they'll set an actual time for that as well. So if you want to be available for August 22nd.
27th.
27th and the 27th and the time to be determined. The meetings city council starts 7 o'clock here in the same room, but it's usually around 7:30, 7:20, 7:30, 7:40.
We have three public hearings. Will be scheduled for tonight.
So maybe 7:20, 8:20 at night.
All right. Moving on, item C. Could the clerk please read that into the record?
Item C, High Point Place Apartments, Case 1, 2018-1402. A request by Metro Development LLC for approval of a rezoning amendment for the High Point Place Apartments, 160 units on approximately 16.70 acres, parcels number 519-442-10-020-000 and 519-442-10-021-000 from R6 Multifamily Residential District to R6 PMU Multifamily Residential District with a planned mixed-use overlay district located on the north side of Bowtown Road just west of Village Gate Apartments.
I'm sorry, could you guys please keep it down? It's very hard to hear.
Sure.
Case 2, 2018-14-03. Excuse me, 2018-1403. Request by Metro Development LLC for approval of a conditional use permit allowing the placement of a PMU, Planned Mixed-Use Overlay District, to be established for the High Point Place Apartments, 160 units on approximately 16.70 acres. Parcels number 519-442-10-020-000 and 519-442-10-021-000 and located on the north side of Bowtown Road, just west of Village Gate Apartments. And Case 3, 2018-1404, request by Metro Development LLC for approval of preliminary development plan for the High Point Place Apartments, 160 units on approximately 16.70 acres. Parcels number 519-442-10-020-000 and 519-442-10-021-000, zoned R6 PMU, multifamily residential district with a planned mixed-use overlay district, and located on the north side of Bowtown Road, just west of Village Gate Apartments.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, this is same developer, about a half mile down west on Bowtown Road, north side, west of Village Gate Apartments. This 16-acre plus or minus site is zoned R6 for apartments. Land use plan is medium density multifamily on this these two parcels. This is an aerial. The middle part of the site is fairly vacant. There is some trees down the tree line. The northern portion of the site is heavily treed, and they're proposing to preserve that. And the two access points on Bowtown Road, there's some trees in that area. North is to the left on this development. The developer is proposing 160 apartments and 7 buildings on almost 17-acre site. It's for a density of 9.58 units per acre. The engineering department is reviewing preliminary engineering plans for this site. Again, the developer did a traffic impact study for this development, and any improvements to the transportation network would be at their obligation, their financial obligation. The access to this site would be from Bowtown Road North, Ferguson Drive extension. The southern portion of that would be extended northwest to butts the property to the west per the city thoroughfare plan. And also the northern portion of this site, some of the access road, that Ferguson Drive access would cross that portion of the site, and they'd have to dedicate the appropriate right-of-way. The remainder of Ferguson Road would be on the parcel to the west of this site, and also the northern section is through Village Gates Section 2, which we approved 3 or 4 years ago, but for whatever reason hasn't been developed. That's how this would ultimately connect back around to Old Colony Place development. So this incrementally developed parcels makes it difficult to make the full connection at this time, but that's the future plan that would occur out here. There would be one access point into this from this development into the apartment complex. It'd be a looped configuration again. I believe this development would have 340 parking spaces, and I think 60 of those would be in garages again on this site. Staff is recommending an emergency access point from Village Gate Apartments. If they're unable to acquire that access through Village Gates, they'd have to provide another access point, and that would be required if this is approved prior to final development plan approval. Hopefully they can acquire that access. That'd be beneficial for this use and Village Gates to go through this site to get to Village Gates. So hopefully that can be acquired. Pedestrian connectivity, they would be required to install a bike path along the north side of Bowtown Road, and also along Ferguson Road on the west side of Ferguson Road. Then there'd be a sidewalk on the other side of Ferguson Road per our thoroughfare plan. Again, the configuration, the only access is from Ferguson through Bowtown. It would access the 340 parking spots. In this site, the private streets that would have to be constructed to public standards. The 160 units would be divided into 80 one-unit buildings and 80 two-unit bedroom units, one-bedroom units, two-bedroom units. 6 of the buildings would be 3 stories in height, 43 feet height, except for the building number 4, which is the southernmost building adjacent to the retention pond to the south. That'd be 2 stories high and 16 units. That'd be adjacent to the single-family houses to the south in that area. Again, a clubhouse would be constructed just as you enter the site with a pool and the other amenities that they discussed on the last development. Almost 60 acres of this site would be open space. Majority of it is passive, so again, staff is recommending more active open space. The northern portion of the site, which is heavily treed, there is a retention pond in there. However, they're maintaining the trees north of that, and the applicant agreed that they would create a tree preservation easement over that site where those trees would be preserved permanently out there. Landscaping and screening, they'd have just typical street trees along Ferguson Drive and Bowtown Road as required. They're proposing a 5 to 6 foot high mound adjacent to Village Gate Apartments, and staff is recommending a 5 to 6 foot high mound adjacent to the 2 residential single family houses on East and West Ferguson Drive as it enters the site. And where it's not adjacent to the single family, they require a 2 to 3 foot high mound to be consistent with other developments. Again, tree removal on the site. They're preserving about 4,861 caliper inches of trees. They're removing about 1,172. So again, they're significantly preserving more trees, and that would be eliminated. And they're also creating a tree preservation area, as I discussed earlier. The gateways and corridors plan, staff recommends a comprehensive sign plan and final development plan approval, and a lighting plan would be required during the final development plan approval process. Again, these are the same elevations as we discussed earlier. It'd be 3-story. Majority of the elevations would be vinyl siding and the like. And this is the clubhouse. It'd be the same clubhouse elevation. And here's the zoning district comparisons. By right, they'd be allowed 8 units per acre on this site. Density bonus would allow 160 units. They're proposing 160 units, about just under 9.6 acres. Again, the height is 35-foot high maximum. They're proposing 42. The apartment sizes are less than what R6 district allows. Natural materials is the same configuration. Staff is requesting that the natural materials adjacent to the public streets again be near 100% natural materials. That was the last one. Buffer to adjacent single family. The R6 district is required a 6-foot high fence or continuous screen. They're proposing a 5 to 6 foot high mound with 6 foot high evergreens. And also they're including a 5 to 6 foot high mound adjacent to village gate, which is not required per our code. The minimum open space is 20%. They're providing 60%. And again, the amenities are the clubhouse, pool, and outdoor grill area. And they are also including a tree preservation easement and the large tree stands to the north. Staff recommends approval of the zoning amendment with 3 conditions, conditional use permit with 0 conditions, and the preliminary development plan with 24 conditions. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Just a quick note on the tree preservation area to make it more than, to make it a recreational amenity as well. One of the things that's proposed is grit path through the forest area, so that residents can walk through that area as well. And that would be field located to minimize any tree removal and the balance of the area within being a permanent tree preserve. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, I got just trying to remember, what was the density on the one over there by the YMCA?
That was,
You remember?
again, that was part of a 200-acre PUD. That was, I think, close to 10.
Close to 10.
Yeah.
It was a bit higher than that. It was based on, 10 would have been at 140 unit. He was coming in at the 180
for the request, yeah.
Yeah, which would have
Well,
pushed it.
it counts on to the, we
Again,
ended up
based
at
on the
168 units.
Yeah.
So I think, if I remember correctly, that was about a 17.25 acre sub area. Going off memory here. That at 168 units, that brought the density down to 9.7. If you take their
Look,
original,
I didn't remember. I knew it was up in that area.
take their original proposal was 10.4.
Now, according to what we have here, the 100% of all apartments elevations will be natural material. Is that correct?
That's what would be required in the base R6 district.
Okay.
They're proposing the same thing they did in the last case with significant panels of stone, Delaware blue vein limestone, and a stone wainscoting, but the rest being vinyl, combination of lap siding and shake. Our recommendation is consistent with the last one, that the public-facing sides of this at least be made out of a qualifying natural material, which could be hardy plank, or it could be all stone or brick or some mixture there. There aren't as many public-facing sides of this.
My concern is that, on houses, we require more. But on apartments, we require less.
Now, typically, if we go to the base district, 100% of every elevation being natural material would be significantly more than we require of house.
I'm saying this one here is less than what we require on a housing district. Isn't that right?
Is it about 50% length?
Well, it depends on zoning district.
It is less than 50,
This is
I
right,
believe.
just a little
A little less
than
than 50. So it depends on the zoning district. Some of them run from 25% to 50% or
Some
so
planned districts are
in base
100.
districts. Now, our planned districts for single-family homes, in the new ones in the Glen Ross area, they've been coming through with different kinds of natural materials that are required, but a higher percentage in some of those developments. Not all of them, but some of them than this, to your point. We do have a mix around the community. There's just no question about that through the build period of the city of Delaware. And of course, we instituted those design requirements, circa 2002. Somewhere in that range. There haven't been a tremendous amount of apartments built since that time in the city.
It just seems to me that it's an awful lot of apartments in one area. I mean, if we go in behind Myers and that, we've got that in there. It just seems to be a lot out there. And I don't know if the city gets to a point, they say, maybe that's as much as we should have in one area. Maybe we need to spread it out a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I'm just, just seems like all of a sudden it's really being.
Well, I think you're having two cases at one time. Of course, we just discussed two significant chunks of apartments on the west side of town this year. Mm-hmm. And we've had those discussions elsewhere in the community as well. The developer could have spread these out, and there's a build period here too for both of these. They don't just all magically appear in a week worth of construction. They could speak to that. But both of these sites, this one, let's focus on this one, was brought in with, from what I could tell, at least annexation-wise, back in the mid-90s, with what's now Village Gate and what we're calling Old Colony subdivision now, and I think there was a name called Dover Farms or something associated with that as well back in history. But this was zoned R6 multifamily and been zoned that way for quite some time as well. So again, I think those are definitely good questions, good points, not just on the east side or west side, but citywide. And something that we should talk about within the comprehensive plan policies as we're developing that plan and looking to the future for Delaware and how the housing market is frankly changing everywhere.
I guess the only other concern I have is that I don't like developments of this size that only have one way in. I know we got emergencies, but we've talked about it before, and we've always tried to make sure there were two in case anything would happen in that first exit. There was another way of getting out. This one has none, okay? So if there would be even a car accident there, nothing, blocking that intersection, everybody's kind of stuck. I don't know how to get out.
Well, item 23 in the conditions says they have to have one.
You have to have another one?
If they can't get it through Village Gates or the other.
No, but that's for the fire trucks. I'm talking about just everyday usage. No, I know we got one for the fire truck.
Sorry.
But I'm talking about for everyday usage of 100 and how many apartments there are, people trying to get out. If there would be an accident right there at the exit on Ferguson, okay, everybody's stuck. I always like to see two of them, and most of the places we do. And this one we may not be able to, but it would be nice if we made room so that Ferguson did get extended. There could have been a second exit out of there, but right now, without tearing down the apartment, I don't see that happening. I don't know where you would put one.
Well, Commissioner, one of the, good point. Obviously, this piece of ground kind of is what it is at this point, and where it is. The long-term plan is obviously for Ferguson to come around. And one of the things we've talked about, at least engineering-wise, and Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, is if Ferguson Road kind of hugs the adjacent property line, here there's a little bit of property shown left, but the road ghosted in. The buildings immediately to the east of that could be spaced just a bit more to allow another access point there off of Ferguson. And it could be lined up with the northern drive aisle there. In my opinion, it doesn't have to be necessarily, could be between those two buildings. to let people come in and out. The more we shove north with development and ponds, the less tree preserve we can have. So that's kind of the choice set there. But that is something that we've talked about.
If they move the pond just a little bit to the north, that would give them plenty of room, should the road ever get
Yeah,
built.
they could do that, or they could move, I can't read the building numbers, I'm sorry. They could move, I think it's
The trash compactor.
2 and 3. They could move to the south a little bit and
Yeah.
create enough room between 1, 2, and 3 to create a driveway, so.
But then you're gonna go to a road that's not built, because he's stopping over here in his
That'd
property.
be for future.
Yeah.
That'd be for the future. I mean, there is just no, the reality is if you build another road out, it's just going to Bowtown anyway at this point. So
So where's the road for the emergency for the fire? Is it?
our recommendation, Mayor, is that the first course of action is to try to work with Village Gates to get that, because not only does it help this developer, it really helps Village Gates, which doesn't have that currently. And then if they can't do that, they would do, I think you can see on the color diagram a little easier, Lance is putting a spotlight on it, they would do an emergency access driveway there. That's complicated because it's obviously a little bit longer, but it also goes over a ditch, I think, at a point, or it would go over a ditch. But those two options are available for secondary emergency access.
But if you were to go into Village Gate, would you start at that stub and just go straight across into the bell part and not this over here?
It would probably be at the north, closer to the north side, I think, is where we're talking about, Jonathan.
Yep.
Based on their drive aisles over there and how you get around. And the fire department is, they've obviously reviewed the plans and the conditions in there. They like the idea of having another way in and out of Village Gate as well, obviously to this one too. Now recall, Village Gate had phase 2 that some of you were here for. It's been approved. It was approved several years ago. I don't remember how many now, but I'll say within the last 5 years. And they didn't move forward with that second phase. That would have extended part of Ferguson essentially to where they would have picked up here on their northern property line. But they just haven't done that yet. So, and that would have provided a second way into Village Gate off of Ferguson as well. So kind of the same approach that we're just talking about here. I presume there's a reason for them not moving forward, and it can't be the fact that multifamily apartments are difficult to rent at this point in time in the housing market. So I think there's something else going on there, but I would presume that they would move forward at some point in the future.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I got a couple. Off of Ferguson, you've got two properties there, one with mounding, but the other without mounding.
We're recommending mounding adjacent on both east and west of Ferguson.
Okay.
They're showing it on one side.
Yeah.
We're recommending on both.
Okay.
Conditions.
Is that recommendation not 10 feet as in the last case, just a 6 foot?
5 to 6 foot mound. We feel in this condition is different than that one. This is a different site with a different text, different layout. In part, there aren't as many units as close to potentially to houses as the Seattle, what's it called, Seattle House, the other one. So, and with building 4, the other big difference is building 4, which is closest to the closest house, being 2 stories rather than 3. We feel is a significant difference as staff as well. Combined with the mounding and landscaping and more of a layered approach here, as you can see, and as Lance said, the condition of some mounding and landscaping over on that, I guess it'd be the west side of Ferguson.
I recall seeing quite a few trees on both of those properties along where the Ferguson would be as well.
Correct.
Yes.
My understanding is that the house that's kind of surrounded here, now it's my understanding, could be wrong, but I think the property owners, at least the legacy property owners that own that, were part of bringing in the farm here that we're talking about behind it and stuff. So presumably knew about Village Gates and Old Colony, and this was multifamily. Obviously, ownership can change over time, so.
Is there going to be any needed improvements to Bowtown at Ferguson? I mean, that's, obviously you know it, so.
Yeah, we're not requiring any improvements to Bowtown as part of this project, to answer your question.
Which building, is it only the one building that's a two-story, building number 4?
Yes. Correct.
That's the only one?
The only
Okay.
one. Obviously, another big difference here is that you have Village Gate apartments to the.
Yeah. Do you know how many units are at Village Gate, just offhand? Similar size?
Hundreds, some in Village Gates, they are two-story units with high-pitched roofs and that, so that is a difference to the.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and have the applicant come up to the podium? Just state your name and your address again for the record.
Joe Thomas, Metro Development, 470 Old Worthington Road, Westerville, Ohio, 43082.
Kepler, 94 North Sandusky Street, Delaware, Ohio.
You gentlemen have anything to add to staff's presentation?
Again, staff did a very thorough job. We appreciate your time and efforts. We know it's a long process for them to put together the staff report. We spent a lot of time analyzing this particular location. As Mr. Eflin alluded to, the property that is kind of an island that's surrounded by this development, it was part of the legacy process that was owned by the property owner that sold this property to the current owner with the intention that it would be multifamily. Same thing with the property further west on Bowtown Road. They own a parcel of this property as part of the legacy prop. Currently, the house that is what Lance just the second time at the rental property, and the property adjacent to it, the rental property, and a couple other houses along that street are also rental properties. So I guess from a standpoint of Ferguson and the connection, we have no problem making that future connection to Ferguson. Difficult site in the sense that we only have our frontages along Bowtown Road. So to make it other allowances to make additional connections is difficult, but we'll of course work with the fire department with the fire lane connection. We'll work with Village Gate next door to the east, try to get them to grant us fire access only drive. And again, reorient the properties there on our west property line to align a future road to Ferguson. And as far as the mounding and the landscaping, as you guys can see along that plan, we really wanted to concentrate on the buffering along the existing homes. We did not neglect to do anything on the side of Ferguson, but more so looking at there's a large stand of existing trees in that area. We really did not want to make impact on the trees as they exist with the root balls, with adding additional mounding, but we'll make every effort to make that an upgraded or enhanced buffering area. And again, on the portion to the north of the property with that large tree preservation, we thought that was a very nice, not only for our community, but for the surrounding developments to continue to have a large area of natural tree protection. And we agreed to put that in an easement and work with staff as far as the alignment of the internal path as you see there to make sure we do not harm any additional trees. And again, also continue Ferguson right away there on the north property line. And I believe we discussed a fee in lieu of on construction of that at a later date. So we appreciate your time and your efforts. We know it's getting late, so I'll leave it at that. All the amenities and essentially the clubhouse and the units are identical to the previous case.
You're good with,
Go ahead.
You're good with all the conditions?
If the staff stays as far as the public fronting natural materials, yes. I think the other conditions are just part of the process.
Same pricing and that $900 to $1,200?
That's correct.
So the trail, I think that's a really great addition back there in the kind of wooded area. Is there going to be additional lighting through that area because trees provide shade and how it gets dark. So is there going to be anything to kind of make it a little safer for people around dusk time, dawn time?
I wouldn't have an objection to that at all. I kind of leave it up to staff for direction. We've done in a lot of communities the low stand lights that are like 3 foot with the halo or the LED that are really effective on lighting up that space without casting a large, basically light pollution as we call it.
Right, absolutely.
So that I don't have any objection to offering that. It's just trying to minimize the tree impact. But that's a good idea.
Just an idea, so.
No, I think it's a very helpful idea.
Certainly work on that with, assuming this gains approval by council on a final development.
Just an idea.
I think it's a good idea.
If you do the vinyl, would you be agreeable to the thicker vinyl, the four we talked about earlier?
Correct.
Can you speak to the water? Same thing with the retention. In this case, you have them on one side and then the other side type of thing, just for kind of talk about which way the water, it's going to be flowing into those and stuff. So maybe we can alleviate some questions later on.
So part of the site goes into the pond in the north section, and then that pond would connect with the pond towards the south through piping. And then they would both outlet into the the existing swale or ditch that comes from Village Gate, kind of across their property and then across the Bowtown Road through culverts, eventually to the south across 36. And we have, just like we did on Seattle House, we have evaluated and approved a preliminary stormwater plan. So they have already put some thought into some preliminary design aspects of those ponds. So.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
At this time, I will open this particular case up to public comment. If there's a member of the public here tonight to speak on this particular case? No, there's not. If there's a member of the public who wishes to speak on this case, please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. David J. Gordon, Gordon, 82 North Franklin Street. I'm a co-owner of LED Investments, along with Mr. Snodgrass behind me, Ed Snodgrass. We've owned LED Investments, which is a commercial property just south of this property. We've owned it since 1990, 8 buildings. There is concern on our part that people will cut through our development. They do now from Village Gate. It'll just be other people cutting through shortcut to 3637. And we can't stop them unless I'm out there with a shotgun. I've kicked the police off the property, running the radar. I will not allow them to run radar on Bowtown, on private property. We are opposed to this because we're afraid that you will, at some time in the future, make us make improvements along Bowtown Road. Sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and that's our concern. There's no sidewalk on Bowtown Road right now. People from The apartments that are there walk up the street, or the road. It's not a street, the middle of the road. And do any of you know how wide that road is at this time? 15 feet. It's very narrow. Not in good shape. It's a county road, is what it is. So the city's going to have to improve that if we don't get it improved now. There are patches in front of these houses right now. We walked, Mr. Snodgrass and I walked it yesterday. We would like to see you keep this as an R6 and keep the density closer to the 8. I did my own calculations. As everybody has said, you can calculate what you can do with figures what you want. They are figuring on the gross acreage. If you look at your packet, the surveyor surveyed this out and took out the Ferguson Road and came up with 15.211 acres, if you look at it. And if you calculate it on 15.211 acres, it's more like 10.5 units to the acre at 160 units. If you keep it at the R6, you would be having units, 1 bedroom at 800 square feet or 678. They want 678 in a 1 unit. A 2 bedroom would be 950. Not that much different, but it must be different to the builder for the cost. He must be able to get more units and it costs him less. So they've asked for not a variance. As in the prior case, he said it was a variance. These are not variances that they're asking for. They're asking you to change it from one district to another district and then a conditional use under the other district. You can't get a conditional use. You'd have to get a variance under the R6. You could do the same thing under the R6. With a variance. Conditional use, you can't object to a conditional use. Conditional use, you have to give somebody under the new zoning calculation. Kind of a neat way of doing it, isn't it? But anyway, our objection is cut through and additional costs down the road. We would hope that if you're going to put a sidewalk in, as you've said here, that they have to put a sidewalk in front of their property, that it would continue, and hopefully you did it when you had the other phase of Village Gate, made them put a sidewalk, but I don't see one in front of Village Gate. There's no sidewalk out there. I can tell you that right now. I don't see one.
I know we usually save questions for them, but they never move forward with Village Gate 2, or else they would have had to do it.
Or you'd make them do it, huh? All right.
And I think it's a bike path.
A bike path?
On the north, on the north.
It better be both.
It's a bike path for this development on the north side of Bowtown.
But you don't have a sidewalk?
Bike path in lieu of a sidewalk.
In lieu of it. So you're not going to have a sidewalk. You think a bike path is more appropriate? Is that because the city manager is a big biker?
No, that's part of our bike plan.
No, but what about sidewalks? Aren't they more important than a bike path?
No,
No, I don't agree with that.
I don't either. I mean, a bike path is wider.
Mm-hmm.
It's more accessible for everybody. Why?
So, oh, you're saying both. They can use it for a bike path and.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It's a multi-use.
Multi-use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because is it identified walk here, bike here? Most bike paths are. In foreign countries, Sweden,
It's a
Copenhagen.
path.
Multi-use. Multi-use.
Yeah.
Do you identify on the path that this is walk and this is bike?
No.
You haven't thought about that? Foreign countries do that.
I
Okay.
haven't seen that anywhere in central Ohio.
You haven't?
No.
Need to think about it. Okay, so they've asked for density change. They've asked for height change. It's 35 feet under the R6. They're asking for you to go to 42. Siding, we don't care about the siding. We're commercial, we don't care about it. Setbacks, nobody's talked about the setbacks. They've asked for you to change the setback for Ferguson. With residential, they want it 12 feet, it's 20 feet under the R6. Nobody's talked about that. So I think that you need to consider and go out there yourselves and see how difficult it is to meet 2 cars on Boattown Road right now. It's difficult. I travel it a lot because I'm out at our project 2 or 3 times a week. So with this amount of traffic, you're going to have to widen Boattown Road. You better get the developer to do some of those changes now if you're going to have this kind of traffic on Boattown. Another thing is you're probably going to change or close the entrance to 3637 at the point. You've been talking about that for years. They'll have to do that. The only way out will be to 521 or through our property. And that's our concern. Go ahead. Ed, this is Ed Snodgrass.
I'll try to make it as fast as I can.
Could you please provide your address for the record?
100 West Delaware Run, Willowbrook. I was last associated with this type of work 2000, June 30th, when I got into the business engineering surveying company in town. And I recognize this real well, he was on council then. But anyhow, Dave and I are not obstructionists. God knows we've made money doing this on the other side of the fence for years. So we both had the same thing and understanding when we built this LED out there. It was done 1990.
That's what we bought.
There wasn't requirements at that time for landscaping. There wasn't requirements for much of anything other than just do some paint redness. But we built it, we go ahead and maintain it and try to keep it good that time. But what bothers me is when I see this here and the road up there on Boattown Road, it's hard to visualize right now what that's going to look like. As it is right now, it's just asphalt, so you can live with that, but it'd be daggone tough and the police department out there. So as David said, we were by yesterday, just watched the cars move, and they're just kind of going like this, people hitting each other, as you say. I don't want to strap the city with anything as well, so you're hard to do the job that you're doing. From what I can tell, it's a fine job. You're going to be hurting to make a decision someplace. But we've been here, like I said, for many years. When the plant land came in from the east and rushed water across us and cost us $20,000 or something like that to get water out of buildings, put storm line in and stuff, we couldn't do a thing about it. Except when the city engineer says, take that water, it's coming to you. And we had to take the water coming to us. Well, that was legal right, I don't know, but it sure was a bad thing. But so, I don't want to say Slater coming in there and the mayor's office or whatever and complaining that someone's cutting through there on a regular basis or the roads are good or anything other things. Tell us what we can do to help them do it. But don't leave us stuck getting hurt.
The other thing is the water. There is a 4-foot culvert that goes through our property, and then there's a 5-foot culvert that goes under 3637 at our property. There is a lot of water at the eastern point where they say they'll take a road out. They can't do that unless they extend that 4-foot culvert, which drains an awful lot of land to the north, just acres and acres of farmland. So there is it sounds easy, but those ponds are not going to take care of that storm water, which is overground right now to our culvert that goes under the road and then through our property underground and opens up close to 36, 37, and then goes through a 5-foot culvert. He's talking about we're taking care of water from the east, from Oakland, and they have tapped into our stormwater system, our own private, and the city said, before you, said they can't do anything about it, that we just have to take their water. That's to the east of us. And we take their watering plants, and it's coming to us constantly. And we shouldn't have to take that, but they haven't put any storm drainage in at all to the east. And we've complained, and we've taken it. But it goes into our detention. Actually, it doesn't go to the detention. It goes along the front of our property. And constantly, if you go out in front of our property, it's constantly draining. But we don't want to have that happen from a project like this. And you can see, they say that there's 60% green. I don't see it looking at it. I see a lot of blacktop. I see some trees to the north, but I don't see 60% maybe open space, but not green space. Just looking at it. And I think that's, do you have any questions of us? Oh, I am a landlord. I rent, and I can tell you that I rent houses at $1,100 a month. I rent a $1,600 up and down townhouse at $850 a month. I think they can do better square footage than this. And it's hard to find good tenants at $1,100 a month. It really is hard to find good tenants at 11 in this town. I go through a lot of people before I find good tenants. And that's for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, basement, 1-car garage.
Right, thank you. So, I mean, in terms of folks using a private property for a cut through, I don't.
Sorry, there might be other public comment as well. I'm not sure. If you want to take it all at one time.
Oh, I was just gonna go one by one because I figure there's not much left. We can go ahead and take it all at one time. That's fine. If there's another member of the public here to speak this evening, please come forward, state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Eddie Ambrose, and I own a property adjacent to this. I own a long field. I'm looking at this project here, and the gentleman who just spoke before me was talking about the condition of Old Town Road. You're talking about putting another 620 units in here. You can take that times 3, that's 320 cars in and out of there a day. How's that road going to handle this? I'm for development, but there's no infrastructure there to begin with. You know, they talk about water. I don't know that there's a big the city has the infrastructure of a storm sewer that goes all the way down through there that picks all that water up. To my knowledge, there is not one. Maybe it's buried out there and I don't know about it, but none of the water off of my property drains that way. And besides that, the water table is high anyways. But I'd like to know just a bit further, what is the plan that the city has to handle these additional cars coming in here? And the interesting thing about it is, why isn't there, there's a road right, if you follow that property straight back, there's another road right back behind that. And you can get to that road through the other subdivisions, and that was brought up earlier. You can cut through those subdivisions and get around behind and come out there by the Delaware County Engineer's Office. Wait, is that Williams Road?
Lake Street.
Vernon Road. Right. Right now, when I see these loop complexes like this, I don't quite understand it. Why allow them to have one in, period? They should, if it's gonna make a loop, it should make a horseshoe. So you got two in, an in and an out. But I'm sure in time, the back of it's gonna be developed. But I noticed in some of the other subdivisions moving forward to that, east of that, there are dead-end streets into the field. So there are gonna be connectors there someplace. Now, is this property here have a connector going north? I don't see one. You see what I'm saying? We have a nice, beautiful green area there, but there's not a connector set up there that traffic could eventually go north on over to Vernon Street, because it's going to dump to Vernon Street anyways, because it's all going to get developed in the next 15 years. So, no, it's just simple things. But the road, Bowtown Road, is not qualified to handle this. You get a bus or a dump truck on that road, somebody's going to have to get up. Somebody has to get off that road to pass, and you're throwing another 620 cars on it. I'm not against the project. I'm against the fact that the infrastructure will not support it. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public here who wish to speak on this case? All right, seeing none, I'll try to go through some of the items that were brought up by the public tonight. But again, one of the big things that continues to come up is the traffic aspect. And in this particular case, it seems to be the condition of the road that's in question here. I've been on the road before, and it's pretty narrow. What's the thought behind what needs to be done or what might need to be done?
Yeah, I tend to agree with the thoughts expressed about Bowtown Road being narrow and relatively poor condition. I can't speak to the fact of why we're not requiring improvements to Bowtown, for example, between the development and 521. I think for one, that might be out of character for requiring that scope of improvement that located off of their site, but I would have to defer to the city engineer for why we're not requesting as part of the conditions any improvements to Bowtown Road. So I apologize for not having a very good answer about that.
No, that's okay.
Other than the fact that it would be a pretty extensive improvement off their site to an existing road.
Okay. Another thing that came up was the water drainage for this particular site and how that's going to impact the neighbors. Any additional commentary you might be able to provide around that?
I think it's the same concept as the previous case where, as is our typical requirements, the developed condition would be required to release water at no faster of a rate than the existing condition, which would require a significant amount of pond volume to hold that water back and release it at a slower rate. It is a public drainage course that traverses through the southeast corner of the property, the little leg that extends to Bowtown to the east of the existing home, a fairly large swale that then is culverted across Bowtown, across the property that was discussed earlier, and again across 36, and that is a public drainage course and a public easement. And so that is an appropriate discharge point for the site. But the key being the stormwater design will have to discharge at no faster a rate than as the property exists today.
Okay.
I think there was just a note to add, I think there was a requirement for a traffic impact study.
There was a traffic impact study performed. And that study did, thanks for bringing that up, Dave. That study did evaluate the need for just a localized improvement of the intersection with their proposed piece of Ferguson at Bowtown. Not Bowtown as a whole, but just that intersection, and the traffic study basically concluded that there was no turn lane improvements necessary based on the traffic volumes. And that is based on the peak hour traffic into or out of the site based on the number of units. And I think they did barely meet the threshold of having to do a traffic study. So they were almost, didn't even need to do a study, but they did do a study and it concluded that no right or left turn lanes were needed off of Bowtown.
But maybe a study should be done on Bowtown, because anybody who's driven it knows how narrow and what poor shape it's in.
I agree.
You're talking about, Mayor, on all of or at least this section of Bowtown from 36 over to 521, which includes a number of developments along it, the office building for one. We heard about the cut through, Village Gate, Old Colony, and now with the roads connecting, I guess you could say some Kensington traffic could go that way too.
Yeah.
So some of the traffic patterns, especially with Vernon connecting, have changed. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but they did do a traffic study to look at that, the impact of this development on the roadway network. Notwithstanding that, maybe we as the city should look at that part of Bowtown, maybe regardless of this development.
I think the main issue in Bowtown is the width of just the regular through travel lanes, irrespective of any turn lane improvements. And I will add that, I agree that's something that should be looked at by the city, and perhaps that will be included in any further studies or part of the point project, that, as I think one of the members of the public mentioned, perhaps blocking off the access to the fire station. If that was something that is done as a part of any of those other projects, I would imagine that improvements could be looked at that time.
Did the traffic impact study didn't go anywhere other than right at the connection to Bowtown, didn't get down to 36, 37 and the left turn on the Bowtown.
That is correct.
There's gonna be a backup of left turn vehicles there greater than there is now to some degree. I don't know what degree that is. Hopefully that'll be addressed in the point project, but we don't know when that's gonna be. That concerns me.
You are correct to say the study did not look at the Bowtown 521 intersection or the Bowtown 36 intersection.
But this has been a problem, not only for Delaware, okay, but for everybody. As development comes in, okay, if you knew what development was going to come in 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you could have done infrastructure work if you had the money, okay? And if you go down to Columbus and you see, they build all this stuff and all of a sudden they start widening the road, like down there by Polaris. It's the way it happens. Nobody likes it. And I'm not saying it's good. It just happens that way. And it all comes down to dollars and cents. It wasn't that long ago the city tried to get an income tax raised for streets, and we as citizens turned it down. So, this is a problem we're facing with, but you can't have, it wouldn't have been fair when you guys built your place out there to tell you, hey, you need to widen the whole road out there, Bowtown Road. No, it wouldn't have. Okay, so we'll just have you widen your property ending. So it would have been wider there and then narrowed down, and then somebody else would have kept on adding to it. It's now the point that it's developed beyond what it can handle. And you're right, the city needs to look at it to say, what can we do? But where does that money come from? That's taken away from someplace else. I understand your problem, your concern with cut through, but we've heard that from every street here in town, not every street, but a lot of streets in town. People complaining because they're cutting through to go to Walmart, and they're cutting through to go to here. Or yours is private property, and they have no right to do that, and they shouldn't do it. But then, as I've often said, you can't turn right or left going into Walmart or going to CVS, but I guess they don't read signs because they do it anyways. It's the nature of the game. But I think that if the city does widen it for one reason or another, I think to go to the property owners and tell them they have to pay for sidewalks and curbs, I don't think the city would do that. Because I don't believe they would. I'd hope they wouldn't.
Yeah, in terms of a cut through, I don't wish I had a great answer for you there. It's hard as a city to police cut throughs. I mean, certainly you could always put signs up, but we all know what signs do. Sometimes very little. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts behind that. I mean, I understand the frustration for sure.
My only thought is really regardless of the development, they've indicated they have cut through regardless of this development. Their concern is that they have more with this
Right.
development. That's what I heard. Maybe there's a way to work with, regardless of the outcome of this, with their development and our traffic engineers to try to minimize the cut through to the extent, I don't know what that would be. But,
Right.
that would be a thought. One note I had with respect to densities, again, same comment I made in the last one. We would typically, whether it's base zoning or particularly in the case of a PUD, look at the gross acreage when we calculate density. As a community, we've done that for a long, long time. And again, you can calculate it lots of different ways too. You can, that was not an invalid way to do it. That was just taking out the right of way and saying this is what's left and here's how many units. And so that's a perfectly valid density calculation. But as a community, we do it based on growth.
Okay.
I find it kind of ironic that we hear tonight that Bowtown is 15 feet wide, but yet we're requiring at least 16 to 18 feet for the emergency vehicles to be able to get through these subdivisions and these communities that we're thinking about approving. I think the neighbors make a pretty compelling argument about, obviously, the big problem is Bowtown Road and the width of it, the condition of it, and then adding all this additional occupancy for apartments, and then the stormwater runoff. Maybe that's why the neighbor who we've approved earlier to go to a new section hasn't built, because they see it for themselves with these problems that are there right now. So there's more underlying issues here than just approving rezoning and changing this from R6 to R6 PMU. So those are my thoughts.
Again, the one good thoughts. The one thing, if just fun with density and math, what we're talking about here is, first of all, the R6 does have a density range in base permitted of 8. And then with a conditional use permit, you can have a density bonus. We've done that a lot in the past, but we tend to do more land developments now to gain control of developments in other ways. But the difference between an 8 unit per acre and what they're asking for right now is it's not 160 units dumping out on the Bowtown. We've contemplated and zoned the land, annexed and zoned the land, previous councils have. That would have, it's a difference of about 26 units is what we're talking about. So just to put it a little bit in perspective, not saying that Bowtown is not in need of widening. I mean, I've driven it too. That's pretty obvious. But to Jim's point, Jim Halter's point, it's difficult to make each developer of a relatively small development fix a systemic problem. We had the same conversation on East Central Avenue for the last 30 years of development.
Yeah, we got the same problem on West Central too.
It's the nature of development and building roads, I guess.
Here's the problem now, wait till you start the point.
I think the citizen earlier had a good point, and I know the traffic engineers will deal with this, but when the point project begins, how do you just route the construction traffic, the traffic around the construction zone? Yes, so that's something that the engineers are going to have to figure out.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think there's a good solution. I'd be remiss to say that I didn't have concerns about Bowtown, but I don't know what the solution is either.
I don't think the planning commission can come up with an answer on that.
Nope.
I think that's a city and engineering and budgeting and everything else concerned, and I don't have an answer for that. I wish I did.
All right. Does the commission have any remaining questions for staff or applicant or? What's the wish of the commission?
Well, I'll move to approve item 2018-1402 with the staff recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Badger,
Second.
second by Mr. Prawl.
Mr. Badger,
No?
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Volinick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
No.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
No.
Chairman Simpson.
No.
Well, I'm wondering, what do we do now? If that didn't pass, can we do the other one?
The other two wouldn't make any difference, does it?
I think you should,
Still should do
I
it.
think you should take votes on the other ones because they do proceed to, you're not making a final decision, you're making a recommendation to city council.
Okay, I'll move item 2018-1403 for approval with staff conditions.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Badger, second by Mr. Prawl.
Mr. Badger,
No?
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Volinick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
No.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
No.
Chairman Simpson.
No.
And I'll move item 2018-1404 with all staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Badger, second by Mr. Prawl.
Mr. Badger,
No?
Mr. Halter,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Volinick,
Yes.
Mayor Riggle,
No.
Vice Chairman Mansoris,
No.
Chairman Simpson.
No.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 5, planning director's report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, just wanted to mention, I know the hour's late, but want to mention we had our first meeting of our steering committee for the comprehensive plan. Mr. Badger, Mr. Simpson, and Mr. Mansoros are on that 31-member commission, steering committee. That was last month. I thought it was a good kickoff meeting. I'll let them chime in with their thoughts as well. But an opportunity to let that rather large group kind of meet each other and first of all, but also go through, I think, the first really planning exercise in that process that we're then going to take forward to some of our public involvement meetings coming up, hopefully in September. The second meeting of that steering committee is scheduled for the 14th of this month out at the National Guard as well. And we will be getting materials out to that steering committee as soon as we have them ready. And again, the first large portion of public involvement is tentatively set for points in September. And we are also spooling up a website for the comprehensive plan process that will allow for information to be disseminated, but also will allow for some public comment, if you will, electronically that way, and some exercises once we get into that part of the process. So it's a lot of work for us as staff, especially 4 of us, on top of lots of development happening, but it's good. Obviously, all the conversations that we're having as a community, even the 2 cases you had tonight with respect to apartments, we need to have these conversations and figure out as a city council, ultimately, community really ultimately, what our policies are going into the future with respect to a lot of things, development being one of them. So it's a good moment for us to talk about all this stuff. That's all I have given the hour. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Dave. Item number 6, commission member comments and discussion. Around the horn. Nothing? Dean? Nothing. George?
Not tonight.
None?
No.
I have nothing as well. Sorry. Item number 7, next regular meeting, September 5th, 2018. That's right after the holiday, right?
Yep.
It is.
Yeah, all right.
One note, Commissioners, I think we are looking, Lance, at moving the October meeting to the 17th of October. We have every 2 years, there's a regional tri-state planning conference for Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. That happens to be this year, and it's in Cincinnati. And first of all, those of us that are certified, Lance and I need to go get continuing education credit hours at that. But also, it's a good opportunity for us as staff to keep up on the latest trends and practices. And that unfortunately falls on our planning commission day.
Well, then you can make it up to us by bringing us some chocolate on the 17th.
No problem. If you want some graders from Cincy or something, let me know.
Graders would be fine, like
Or whatever else.
Beer.
Some get it?
Beer.
You know what, get it?
All right. Well, with that, 10:20 PM, we're adjourned. Sorry to keep you out so